Chapter 1838. It was turbulent and chaotic. On the battlefield, Lin Sun suddenly let out a long roar, and endless Taishian sword chi was released from the acupoints all over his body. The dense strands of sword chi were vast, blazing, and boundlessly brilliant. They interweaved together and transformed into an entire 72 mountains of swords. Each sword mountain was composed of 3,800 Taishian sword chi, deducing the 72 earthly evil sword mountains. Therefore, they were called earthly evil sword mountains. Boom! The world wailed, and the 72 earthly evil sword mountains spread out as if to suppress the world, releasing terrifying sword chi. In an instant, there were exclamations in the field. As each sword mountain pressed down, more than a dozen strongmen had no time to dodge. Their bodies were crushed by the sword mountain and burst into a scarlet rain of blood. That domineering and bloody scene shocked many people, and their souls almost came out of their bodies. Too strong. In front of Lin Sun, Ultimate Sage was as vulnerable as a piece of paper. Lin Sun killed him casually and calmly, unstoppable. No matter how many chickens and dogs there are, they're doomed to be in vain. Lin Sun's voice was cold. The Avicii and Yuan-Tu swords clanged in his hands, turning into a horrible purgatory and a scarlet Styx river. His figure was like a great abyss moving horizontally. The unparalleled demonic posture made when Qingxue, Meng Yi, and others feel cold in their hands and feet, and an uncontrollable chill surged in their hearts. What kind of monster was he? He was alone, as if he was invincible. He suppressed the field and wantonly conquered. Buzz, someone used his trump card, which was a Taoist text imprinted with the aura of the emperor. Every word was like the sun, dazzling, terrifying, and mysterious. But in just a moment, it was suppressed by Lin Sun with the Tower of Endless Tao, and the Taoist text collapsed and disappeared in the void. It was in vain. The strongman who used his trump card was directly killed by Lin Sun. The two swords crisscrossed and cut the man into pieces like a pair of scissors. How could he be so powerful? Damn it. Why is it like this? Countless experts were furious. Their faces were livid, and their eyes almost split open. They couldn't believe that a young man from the ancient Desolation realm could be so heaven-defying. That level of combat strength was like that of an exalted exalt at the peak of the eminent saint realm, and he possessed the demeanor of suppressing all enemies, causing the hearts of others to feel cold and horrified. On the other side, Ahu controlled various miraculous treasures, and he was capable of both offense and defense as he fought fiercely with all his opponents with ease. Although he didn't have the absolute upper hand, he wasn't suppressed either. He was completely evenly matched, but even so it was still shocking. Although he was not as overbearing and fierce as Lin Sun, he was not inferior to Lin Sun in terms of combat power. Puff! On the battlefield, Lin Sun killed people like tearing paintings. In a moment, he killed another opponent, showing a crushing posture. This made everyone even more fearful. Hua Xingli, Zhuan Yuheng, if you join forces with me and join the battle, this kid will definitely die. In the distance, Zuling Kuan, a descendant of the Su family and ranked 13th on the Great Saint list of Starry Sky, suddenly spoke. His eyes were as bright as the sun, and his whole body was flowing with golden luster. His chi was roaring, and his power was terrifying. Lin Sun was so powerful that he couldn't help but want to fight. I have no grievances with him. Why should I get involved? Zhuan Yuheng was expressionless. He was dressed in feather clothes, holding a sword in his arms. His figure was tall and dignified, and his appearance was handsome and heroic. There was a touch of arrogance and indifference in his eyes. As a pure-blood descendant of the Zhuanyu family, and a peerless figure ranked in the top 10 on the Great Saint list of Starry Sky, Zhuan Yuheng had his own pride and calculations. Hua Xingli also spoke, with a sneer on his sickly pale face. Sorry, although I have killed countless people over the years, I hate being besieged the most. Xue Qingyi was so anxious that she almost cried out. What good opportunity! How could he refuse like this? Zuling Kuin's eyes flickered, and he was a little surprised. Finally, he fell silent. In the field, the battle became more and more fierce. Many strong people who besieged Lin began to shake violently, and their hearts trembled. They were no longer as brave and strong as before. At this time, at least 30 strong people had been killed by Lin Sun with cold means, and their bodies and souls were destroyed. In the outside world, every single one of these peak great saints were renowned figures that were highly regarded by the great powers, held in high esteem by their peers, and revered by the weak. But in front of Lin Sun, they were slaughtered like chickens and dogs. This was undoubtedly too shocking and shocking. If it was spread out, it was bound to cause a sensation in the starry sky and make the world tremble. Crack! A strong man's head was crushed by Lin Sun's foot. His body fell like a meteor and crashed to the ground, splashing blood and smoke all over the sky. However, when Lin Sun was about to continue killing, someone in the field suddenly shouted excitedly, "The torrent of the Great Way has disappeared." This sentence was earth-shattering. Su Ling Kun, Zhuan Yu Hong, Hua Xingli, and others who were stationed in the distance to watch the battle almost immediately set off and rushed to Kunlun Hill. "Let's go. Hurry up. The fortune of the holy way of pilgrimage is the most important." For a moment, many people also came to their senses and rushed to Kunlun Hill from different areas. It should be noted that Kunlun Hill was extremely majestic and occupied a large area, like the backbone of heaven and earth. The area at the foot of the mountain was also extremely vast. The area where Lin Sun and the others were fighting was just the tip of the iceberg. The expressions of those experts who were fighting Lin Sun with all their might changed. Many of them gritted their teeth and retreated, charging towards the Kunlun Hill. "Let's go." When Qingxue showed an extremely decisive will. At this moment, she flashed without hesitation and rushed to Kunlun Hill. Seeing this, other strong people completely panicked and lost their will to fight. Like monkeys scattering when a tree falls, they chose to retreat and rushed to Kunlun Hill. But how could Lin Sun agree? Taking advantage of this moment of panic, he did not hesitate to kill more than a dozen people. "You still want to leave?" Suddenly, Lin Sun's figure flashed strangely and appeared in a direction, blocking Meng Yi, who was about to take the opportunity to escape. Meng Yi's expression changed greatly. "Brother Lin, I have no grudge against you. This is all Wen Qingxue's idea. Why didn't you stop her, but targeted me?" Lin Sun showed a touch of mockery. "Brother Meng, your shamelessness is really beyond my expectations. What's more, do you think she can leave alive after escaping to Kunlun Hill?" As he spoke, he brandished his sword and attacked in a straightforward, swift, and decisive manner. Meng Yi had long lost his will to fight. Subconsciously, he wanted to dodge and retreat. Boom! However, Lin Sun had no intention of giving him the chance. With a full force attack, he sent Meng Yi flying, blood spurting from his mouth and nose. His face was pale and ugly. He hissed ferociously, "Lin Sun, you really don't want the holy way of pilgrimage? Why do you have to make things difficult for me? Do you really want to become the enemy of my Xiongqi fighting clan?" Lin Sun did not hide his mockery. "Tsk, trying to scare me with the power of your clan again. Is that all you can do, Meng Yi?" Swoosh! Sword Chi surged and soared into the sky, sweeping down with great power. Meng Yi's heart trembled. He used the shadow of water mirror with all his might. Suddenly, hundreds of clones appeared in the field, each of them exactly the same as Meng Yi. Even their auras were the same, making it difficult to tell which one was the real one. Meng Yi had used this method to escape in front of God-locking Sky Peak. Lin Sun had suffered once, so how could he fall for it again? His way of dealing with it was very simple. Whether it was a clone or the original body, he would just kill them all. Boom! Endless Taishian sword Chi swept out like thousands of divine rainbows shooting in all directions. It pierced and tore through the void, creating a shocking long and narrow crack. As for Meng Yi's clones, they disappeared like bubbles. Poof! Almost at the same time, his original body staggered and coughed up blood. He tried his best to dodge, but he could not block the attack of the group of sword chi. Brother Lin, I admit defeat. You know that I only made a deal with Wen Qingxue. Now, can I work with you and help you deal with Wen Qingxue? Meng, he was completely flustered. His hair was disheveled, and he begged for mercy. No, Lin Sun said flatly. Do you remember what I said before? If you don't kill yourself, I'll kill myself for you. Before his voice died away, Lin Sun had already disappeared. Boom! The next moment, Meng, he was cut down from the void by a sword and smashed hard on the ground. His muscles and bones were almost broken. Previously, Lin Sun had defeated a group of strong cultivators working together, let alone a one-on-one fight. Most importantly, at this moment, all the other strong cultivators were focused on rushing to Kunlun Hill. No one was going to rescue Meng Yi. In other words, it was because Meng Yi had attracted Lin Sun's attention that the other strong cultivators had a chance to escape. Who would be stupid enough to stay and die with Meng Yi? Bang! Lin Sun landed and stepped on Meng Yi. His dark eyes were deep as he looked down at him. I'll give you one last chance to kill yourself. Otherwise, I'll do it for you. His voice carried a bone-chilling coldness. Meng Yi's cheeks were twisted with fear and anger. As a pure-blooded descendant of the Qiongqi fighting clan, he had never been humiliated like this since he started cultivating. He hissed, Lin Sun, I've already admitted my mistake. I'll make it up to you 10 times or even 100 times over. Why do you have to kill me? Bang! The next moment, his whole body exploded. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere. His soul was grasped and imprisoned by Lin Sun. Make it up to you? Do you think I want it? Lin Sun's dark eyes were frighteningly cold. Meng Yi's spirit struggled in fear, but to no avail. He screamed, Then tell me your conditions. As long as you let me live, I'll agree to anything. Lin Sun sneered. Didn't you want to kill yourself? I'll help you. As he spoke, he grabbed Meng Yi's wrist and stabbed it into the neck of his spirit. Bang! Light rained down. Meng Yi's spirit suddenly exploded. Even at death's door, he wore a look of astonishment, anger, resentment, and confusion. Chapter 1839. Lin Sun let out a long breath and looked at the Kunlun Hill with deep eyes. Anyone who had almost been tricked and killed would never be able to forgive a despicable person like Meng Yi. Even if Meng Yi had knelt down and begged for mercy and offered hundreds of times more compensation, Lin Sun would never show mercy. Can you still fight? Ahu floated over from afar. She was dressed in a yellow dress, and her skin was whiter than snow. Her beauty was both immortal and enchanting. Lin Sun said casually, I just broke through the realm not long ago. The previous battles were just like whetstones that helped me temper my realm. Ahu couldn't help but laugh. Her beautiful eyes sparkled, and her charm was intoxicating. You're quite narcissistic. Lin Sun touched his nose and said helplessly, The point is that there's no one who can fight until now. What else can I say? Ahu laughed and rolled her eyes at Lin Sun. The real tough ones haven't shown up yet. Zhuan Yuheng and Zhu Lingkuan are not easy to deal with. Lin Sun agreed and decided to go up the hill. Although Meng Yi was dead, Wen Qingxue was still alive. The Kunlun Hill was beautiful and majestic. The mountains, rocks, plants, and trees were full of vitality, chaotic air, and auspicious rain. Walking on it made one feel small and insignificant, and it was a shocking sight. Obscure and mysterious taboo power covered the whole mountain. No matter how high one's cultivation was, he could only walk on the mountain instead of flying. This was similar to the restriction on Yulong Mountain. As one of the 3 forbidden areas of the Kunlun ruins, the pilgrimage platform has always been mysterious. Along the way, Ahu quickly sent a voice transmission. Even though no cultivator has ever obtained the secret of becoming an emperor or ancestor in the countless years of the past, the major figures of the ancient path of the starry sky still firmly believe that such a supreme fortune exists on the pilgrimage platform. Lin Sun said, while looking at the scenery along the way, the opportunity to become an emperor or ancestor is too far away from us. Even if we can prove its existence, it's not something we can comprehend now. I'm not too interested in it. Ahu nodded in agreement. Everyone understands this logic. Therefore, The real attraction of his crowning platform is the creation related to the divine path crowning ceremony. Lin Sun thought for a moment and said, "The holy way of worshipping Zen can turn a saint into a sage. If there is such a good fortune, it is indeed enough to make any great saint excited." Ahu said, "Are you not tempted?" Lin Sun replied, "I'm just curious." There were two methods for the sage Tao pilgrimage. The first was to enter the world and enlighten all living beings, carrying out one's grand aspirations and obtaining the faith of all living beings. Then, one would be able to obtain an endless stream of wish energy from all living beings and be conferred as a sage. The first was to emerge into the world and verify one's own Tao with the myriad of Taos in the world to establish a new path towards the Tao, or perhaps to create an unprecedented technique. Thus, one would be able to obtain the wish energy of the Grand Tao and become a sage. Now, Lin Sun's infinite way bottle contained the force of living beings left by the Great Way Lawless Bell. This enabled Lin Sun to be crowned as a sage by virtue of the will of all living beings. Similarly, the path Lin Sun pursued and the great Tao furnace scripture he created could be said to be unprecedented Tao and Dharma. Thus, he also had the ability to be crowned as a sage by virtue of the will of the Great Way. Therefore, Lin Sun was not very interested in the holy way of worshipping Zen. He was just curious about the pilgrimage platform. The ultimate purpose of Lin Sun's trip to the pilgrimage platform was only related to killing enemies. After the time it takes to burn a stick of incense when they arrived at the mountainside, Lin Sun and Ahu saw an ancient mottled stele with an immortal breath of time. On the stele, there were 4 primordial Taoist characters: the road of worshipping Zen. Brother Lin, the test of being crowned as a sage will start here. Next, every step is distributed with the mysterious power of the Great Way. Only those who can compete with it can reach the pilgrimage platform at the top of the mountain step by step. Ahu showed his eagerness to have a try. Since ancient times, no one knew how many wonderful and peerless figures had set foot on the road of worshipping Zen and climbed up, leaving all kinds of legendary stories. But more practitioners stopped at the road of worshipping Zen and had no chance to reach the top of the mountain. This was a test. Only the real strong could stand out from it and have the opportunity to transform from a sage to a sage. Lin Sun looked up and saw the winding mountain path was full of chaotic qi, like a mist which made it impossible to see clearly. Even a figure could not be seen. Obviously, the strong practitioners who rushed up to the Kunlun Hill were already on the way to climb the road of worshipping Zen. It is said that all those who are in the holy way of worshipping Zen around the pilgrimage platform at the top of the mountain are qualified to leave their own pilgrimage tablet. I hope I can be one of them. Ahu's eyes were shining with a touch of desire. Pilgrimage tablet? Lin Sun was surprised. Yes, it's a kind of tablet that symbolizes the power of sages. If you can leave your name on the pilgrimage platform, you can get the power of God's luck. It's extremely magical. Ahu said, and, as far as I know, that supreme power can only be found on the pilgrimage platform. It can't be seen in the outside world. As long as you can get this special power, it will be of incredible help when you become an emperor in the future. Lin Sun was shocked. How could a kind of power of God's luck that could only be found on the pilgrimage platform of Kunlun ruins have such a magical effect? It was really incredible. Then don't delay. Let's start. Lin Sun could see that Ahu was already a little impatient. Ahu took a deep breath and immediately took action. She took the lead, crossed the ancient pilgrimage tablet, and stepped on the stone steps filled with chaotic qi. Whoosh! In an instant, her figure disappeared in a thin air and could no longer be found. Lin Sun couldn't help being stunned, realizing that this road of worshipping Zen was far more mysterious than he had imagined. Interesting. Lin Sun also took action without hesitation. When his figure had just crossed the pilgrimage tablet and his feet had not yet landed, suddenly a figure appeared behind him silently, raising a sharp awl in his palm and stabbing it at Lin Sun's back. From beginning to end, there was no fluctuation at all. It was extremely strange. But Lin Sun seemed to have eyes on his back. At this critical moment of danger, his body twisted in a strange way, and he suddenly turned around. At the same time, the broken blade swept out violently. Clang! A deafening roar sounded, and sparks flew in all directions. The figure was shaken and took a few steps back. This person was skinny, and his eyes were strange brown. His whole body was surrounded by gray mist. It was Sha Luqing, the oracle emissary from the divine Sunshine Ancient Sect. He was a little surprised, as if he didn't expect Lin Sun to react so quickly. Clatter, almost at the same time, a strange black lotus condensed above Lin Sun's head, and the pistil of the flower poured out wisps of black light. The light was like a handful of needles as thin as a cow's hair, glowing with a frightening luster. If it were others who were attacked from behind, even if they could react quickly and avoid the disaster, they would never think that there would be a more horrible killing move emerging in the void above their heads. But Lin Sun seemed to have foreseen it. He just stretched out his hand and pointed to the sky. The great divination void-breaking finger. So close and so far. As soon as he pointed, the wisps of black light seemed to be as far away as the end of the world from Lin Sun, even though they were clearly very close to him. Boom! The black lotus burst into pieces, and the black light all over the sky dissipated. At the same time, a surprised voice sounded in the nearby area. Did the heretic already notice it? Along with the voice, the black-robed monk Kudu from the Hidden Land realm appeared not far away. I can only say that the prey is getting more and more cunning, Sha Luqing sighed softly, but he didn't look depressed. Lin Sun's dark eyes were as deep as the abyss. Looking at the two ruthless characters from two of the three great forces in the dark world, he said expressionlessly, "You two, I have been waiting for you for a long time." Boom! As he spoke, he suddenly became violent. His figure was like a swift bolt of lightning as he punched at Sha Luqing with the momentum of the wind and sea rain. Sha Luqing smiled coldly, and his figure suddenly turned into smoke and disappeared. But Lin Sun didn't even look at him. He suddenly raised his fist and smashed it at the void beside him with great power, like a god lifting a mountain to kill. Bang! The void exploded. At the same time, Sha Luqing's figure staggered back and was blown away by the terrible punch. He coughed up blood with a pale face and an incredulous look on his face. "You can see through my whereabouts?" After all, emissaries of the oracle like him were most skilled in concealment. And it was precisely by relying on this unique natural talent that they were able to appear and disappear like ghosts and kill without making a single sound, causing them to be the most mysterious and terrifying. But now, Lin Sun seemed to have seen through all his disguises. This was equivalent to smashing his biggest reliance and completely exposing it. Whoosh! Lin Sun didn't talk nonsense at all. After a successful strike, the broken sword swept out horizontally, like a galaxy spreading out in the void. Sha Luqing let out a strange cry, and his figure suddenly turned into smoke, disappearing far away. He was really frightened by Lin Sun's punch just now. Suppress. Not far away, Kudu acted in time. A black bell with dense Sanskrit characters on it swept out, covering Lin Sun with all kinds of visions of the Pure Land of Buddha. Lin Sun waved his fist, releasing a terrible power that seemed to devour the sky. Clang! The black bell buzzed, and the sound reached the sky. It was on the verge of falling. In the distance, Kudu's body trembled, and his face changed slightly. The power of this heretic was simply terrifying. "Go!" Sha Luqing shouted. Once he showed himself now, he would lose his biggest trump card. Lin Sun's terror also made Sha Luqing realize the danger. Therefore, without hesitation, he chose to retreat and rush down the mountain. Whoosh! At the same time, Kudu's figure turned into a black Buddha light and rushed out like a tide. Lin Sun stopped in his tracks. He didn't waste any energy to stop them, because he knew very well that if these two didn't kill him, they wouldn't let him go. "I'll wait for you two up there." Chapter 1841. Whoosh! In an instant, Lin Sun felt his figure shake, and a strange feeling arose spontaneously. It was still the same mountain road, but there were layers of mottled, ancient stone steps on the mountain road. Standing on it, the air of chaos was pervaded, and the pure breath of the Great Way rushed to his face, transforming into a mysterious, oppressive force. In an instant, Lin Sun's body tightened, as if he was in a turbulent torrent of the Great Way. The mysterious force directly acted on his soul, state of mind, and cultivation, and he couldn't avoid it at all. Whoosh! Then, Lin Sun ran his chi to counteract the mysterious force. Interesting, Lin Sun showed a strange expression. The tempering on the pilgrimage road wasn't a simple confrontation of strength. It required the practitioner's own soul, state of mind, and cultivation to be strong enough. Simply speaking, once one's soul, mental state, and cultivation were too weak or flawed in any one of them, then one was bound to be unable to endure such tempering. As if to confirm his speculation, Lin Sun walked up the steps. As expected, as he went up, the tempering force on the stone steps became stronger. At first, it was like a raging torrent, but gradually it turned into a vast ocean storm, full of terrible oppressive force. If the soul can't bear it, the mind will become dizzy. If the state of mind can't bear it, all kinds of illusions will appear and bring all kinds of dangers. If the cultivation can't bear it, the chi will be chaotic, as if being suppressed by the Great Way. As he walked, Lin Sun experienced it. With his hands behind his back and his black hair fluttering, he walked on the stone steps as if he was taking a leisurely stroll. This was the pilgrimage road. Since ancient times, countless peerless figures who were famous in the starry sky had walked on this road, leaving behind countless legends that people took delight in talking about. But those who could pass the tempering and reach the pilgrimage platform at the top of the mountain were few and far between. Most of the other strong people stopped in dejection and didn't have the chance to enter the pilgrimage road. Therefore, for countless years, all the practitioners who set foot on the pilgrimage road were cautious and tried their best. For others, the road of tempering was like a flood and fierce beast, but for Lin Sun, it was like a gentle breeze, calm and peaceful. In the final analysis, Lin Sun's cultivation, soul, and state of mind had long been tempered to be incomparably strong, far from being comparable to ordinary people. As a result, the training on the pilgrimage path, to him, was not an obstacle or a problem. His footsteps were unhurried as he ascended the stairs. He even had the leisure to admire the scenery along the way. He was relaxed and content. Before long, a figure appeared in Lin Sun's sight. It was a descendant of the Swanee war race. He wore a luxurious robe, and when he climbed up the stairs, his face was pale and his forehead was covered in cold sweat. His gaze was unfocused, and it was obvious that he was struggling. Tired, Lin Sun walked up the stone steps and came to this man. The man in the luxurious robe subconsciously replied, "Tired, really fucking tired." As soon as he finished his words, he felt something wrong. His body suddenly stiffened and he exclaimed, "It's you, Lin Sun?" Lin smiled and said, "I'm not tired." The man was stunned and widened his eyes as if he had suffered a great humiliation. He roared and slapped Lin Sun with his palm. With a flick of Lin Sun's finger, a wisp of sword chi shot out and pierced the man's eyebrows. His body staggered and fell to the ground. "You're courting death." Lin Sun shook his head and continued to move forward. Who? In front of him, a red-robed woman shouted coldly and turned her head vigilantly. When she saw Lin Sun approaching, her pupils shrank. "Do you hate me?" Lin Sun stepped forward and asked. The red-robed woman hurriedly shook her head. Lin Sun replied with an "oh" and ignored him. He walked past him and continued to walk on the pilgrimage road. Until Lin Sun's figure disappeared, the red-robed woman felt relieved, but her expression was complicated. The pilgrimage path was so terrible, but Lin Sun seemed to be strolling leisurely. Compared with him, it was undoubtedly a great blow. Boom! It didn't take long for a battle to break out. On the way, Lin Sun met several descendants of the Panwu Taoism court. If he wanted to move forward, he was destined to surpass these opponents. When they saw Lin Sun, their great enemy, they didn't hesitate to attack with all their strength. The result was no exception. When Lin Sun left, there were several corpses scattered on the stone steps, and blood was flowing. On the way, Lin Sun met many cultivators who were struggling on the pilgrimage path. Many of them were sworn enemies. When they were at the foot of the mountain, they had participated in the siege against Lin Sun. Lin Sun didn't show any mercy to these people at all. He killed them and set off a path of blood and death. At the same time, there were many unfamiliar faces along the way. They didn't have any enmity with Lin Sun. When they saw Lin Sun appear, these powerhouses all acted as if they were facing a formidable enemy. After all, the legendary Lin Sun was a fearless and unscrupulous demon god. Who wouldn't be afraid of him? However, to their surprise, Lin Sun didn't pay attention to them at all. He would only attack when he encountered someone who blocked his way. It seems that this demon god Lin isn't a cruel and bloodthirsty person. Maybe in his eyes, he doesn't take us seriously at all. Alas, there are so many heroes on the Starry Sky ancient path, and there are even more who have come to the Kunlun ruins. But so far, no one can suppress this kid's limelight and arrogance. It's really depressing. No, don't forget that Zhuan Heng, Zuling Kuan, and the others haven't made a move yet. Along the way, similar discussions rang out incessantly. Some people were jealous of Lin Sun, some were hostile, and some were depressed. However, none of these affected Lin Sun. Although he was the last group of powerhouses to set foot on the pilgrimage path, he didn't encounter any obstacles along the way. Although his speed wasn't too fast, he surpassed one powerhouse after another. Gradually, Lin Sun began to feel the pressure. This pilgrimage path seemed to lead to the sky, and it seemed very long. Along the way, the chaotic chi was filled with the mysterious power of the Great Way, and it seemed very boring. Lin Sun's body rumbled, and his chi flowed, reflecting various wonderful images of the Great Way. He was resisting and dissolving the pressure of the tempering power that was becoming more and more terrifying. Nevertheless, his pace was still steady and calm. I've killed 29 people along the way, and they are all from the three Tao courts, Panwu, Wilderness, and Xinkuan, as well as the war clans such as Bayan Blood Kylan, Sky Ghost, Cheongqi, and Qiyong. Lin Sun calculated silently in his heart. The only thing that surprised him was that he hadn't seen Ahu until now. Obviously, Ahu was also advancing on the pilgrimage path with irresistible force. Suddenly, Lin Sun noticed that on the stone steps in front of him, a monk who looked like a young man with a charmingly naive expression was sitting on the stone steps and panting. The young monk seemed to be simple and honest, but his eyes were lively and full of wisdom. When he saw Lin Sun, he was stunned at first, and then he stood up abruptly and moved aside as if avoiding a snake or a scorpion. Lin Sun didn't rush forward. He stopped and said with interest, "You and I have no enmity. Why are you so afraid of me?" He vaguely remembered that the monk's Buddhist name was Ling Kezi, and he came from the ancient South Temple. The young monk was embarrassed and didn't dare to look at Lin Sun in the eyes. He said in a low voice, "Taoism peer, you are powerful and have outstanding combat power. I'm afraid that all the strong people on the pilgrimage path are afraid of you." Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. No. The young monk trembled all over as if he was scared. He stammered, "Donor, I'm absolutely not lying." Lin Sun couldn't help laughing. He pointed at the young monk and said, "I've met many people who are afraid of me along the way, but you are different. You seem to be especially afraid of me. Why?" The young monk was sweating profusely. He stammered and couldn't say a word. He kept turning a string of Buddhist beads in his hand, looking extremely nervous. Seeing this, Lin Sun couldn't help but feel speechless. Was he an unpardonable murderer? "It's the first time I've met a Buddhist practitioner as timid as you." He shook his head and continued to ascend the stone steps. "I'm not timid. It's you. Your path is too scary." Until Lin Sun's figure disappeared, the young monk, whose Buddhist name was Ling Kezi, exhaled a long breath of turbid air and calmed down. His natural talent was extraordinary, and he was born with an immaculate Buddha heart. He was able to see through some profound things that ordinary cultivators were unable to notice, and he was able to see some extremely profound scenes. From the first time he saw Lin Sun in the Fairy River, he saw a horrible scene of heaven and earth collapsing and all things collapsing. Until he saw Lin Sun coming alone just now. Ling Kezi felt the horrible scene of Lin Sun changed again. It was like he saw a god of slaughter walking alone in the void. Behind him, the world collapsed, the stars fell forever, and all things became barren. Only he hesitated and became the only immortal in the destruction. Such a terrifying scene caused Ling Kezi's immaculate Buddha heart to palpitate, and boundless coldness surged into his body. Since he started his cultivation, he had seen many peerless geniuses who were famous in the starry sky. These peerless geniuses all had different qi, but he had never seen a practitioner like Lin Sun who had such a terrible qi. Therefore, Ling Kezi couldn't help but feel nervous when he heard Lin Sun's question. When I leave Kunlun ruins and return to the sect, I must ask my granduncle why there is such an incredible figure in the world. Ling Kezi took a deep breath and suppressed the palpitations in his heart. After hesitating for a long time, he began to walk up the mountain road. After 30 minutes, Lin Sun's brows gradually wrinkled, and a trace of seriousness appeared on his face. The pressure was getting greater and greater. Looking at the distance of the pilgrimage road, the chaotic qi was pervasive, and he couldn't see the end at all. At this moment, a fierce sound of fighting came from afar. Lin Sun was awestruck. He took a deep breath, ran all the strength in his body, and quickened his pace. Gradually, the scene on the stone steps began to become clear in the chaotic qi. Ahu! Lin Sun's pupil shrank. He finally saw Ahu being beaten by a man on a stone step not far away. Chapter 1842. There was a mistake in yesterday's chapter, so I revised it. Also, the leave slip from the day before yesterday was free. Ahu was in a difficult situation, and her pretty face was solemn. Her opponent was Void Ling Kuan, a pureblood descendant of the Su family, ranked 13th on the Starry Sky Great Sage list. He could be called a peerless overlord among his peers. Previously, Ahu had climbed up the stairs, and he had encountered many opponents along the way. He had killed many people, but relatively speaking, it had been relatively easy. But just now, Voidling Kuan suddenly turned around and attacked from the high stone steps, catching Ahu off guard. Boom! With a cold expression, Voidling Kuan swung his fists. His blood and qi surged like a roaring ocean, and the dazzling golden light turned into unparalleled fist energy. Even though Ahu tried her best to resist, she was still shaken and retreated several stone steps. Miss, this Su will still say the same thing. If you pledge allegiance to me and serve me, I promise to let you live. Voidling Kuan said in a deep voice. His body was tall and majestic, and his skin was flowing with golden light. Every move he made seemed invincible. Boom! As he spoke, he didn't hold back. He raised his fist and punched like a golden god of war, domineering, ruthless, and powerful. Ahu showed a mocking expression. You want me to surrender and then use me to humiliate or threaten Lin Sun? Smart. Voidling Kuan looked very calm and didn't hide it all. In your dreams. Ahu sneered. She was in a very dangerous situation. She was suppressed to retreat from time to time, and her pretty face was slightly pale. The reason was that the pilgrimage path was covered with mysterious Great Way prohibitions, and no treasures or external forces could be used. Similarly, if one moved forward, it would be like sailing against the current, and one would be oppressed by the power of tempering. But if one moved in the opposite direction, it would be smooth sailing, and one could even use the terrifying power of tempering to attack the opponent. Just like Voidling Kuan, at this moment, his combat strength was extremely terrifying, and he was moving in the opposite direction. The power of tempering was imperceptibly used by him to attack Ahu. If that wasn't the case, Ahu wouldn't be in such a sorry state. Others are rushing to the pilgrimage platform, but you don't hesitate to go downhill in order to attack me. Aren't you worried that you can't snatch the opportunity of pilgrimage path? Ahu said coldly. What a joke. You're about to die, so you should be more concerned about yourself. Void Spirit Kuan roared with laughter. His long hair fluttered in the wind, and his gaze was cold and disdainful. My spirit is like a blade, cleaving through the wind and waves. Boom! His fist force was dazzling like a mountain torrent bursting through a dam. Amidst the rumbling sounds of collision, Ahu's figure swayed, and a trace of dark red blood couldn't help but flow from his lips. My heart is like a mountain, unshakable. Boom! Void Spirit Kuan shouted loudly, while his impetus grew even more terrifying and horrifying. Blazing golden light flowed on his body, and he seemed just like the battle saintly spirit of ancient times. Ahu let out a muffled groan. Even though she'd blocked this attack in the end, her figure was blasted back 5 steps, and her delicate and beautiful face had become ghastly pale. Even higher up the stone steps, in the midst of the primal chaos chi, a figure that was as graceful as a fairy quietly observed all of this. Her beautiful face was calm. When Qingxue, at this moment, she finally spoke. Brother Su, please leave her alive. A dead person can't threaten Lin's son. His voice was calm and emotionless. Don't worry, I know better than you. Void Spirit Kuan said indifferently. My body is like the heavens, and I'm peerless and invincible. Void Spirit Kuan suddenly took a deep breath, and then the force of his fist changed once more. It became even more terrifying, and it emanated brilliant golden light while the laws of the Grand Tao rumbled within it. Ahu's expression finally changed. She wasn't confident in her ability to resist this attack, and it was even to the extent that she couldn't even dodge because the vital energy in her entire body had been enveloped by the might of this punch. Right at this moment, a figure suddenly flashed up explosively from the stone steps below. After all, every single step of the stone steps was covered in terrifying tempering energy, and it was like layer upon layer of barriers and obstructions. Even if it was a top-rate figure, it would be difficult for them to traverse it, and they had no choice but to be careful. However, that figure seemed to be unstoppable, and it arrived before her in the blink of an eye and dragged Ahu behind him. At the same time, he punched with his right fist. Bang! A world-shaking sound of collision resounded, and the primal chaos chi that suffused the surroundings was blasted to the point of dispersing. That figure stood towering on the stone steps. He was firm as if his feet were rooted to the ground, and he didn't move at all. Only his clothes and long hair fluttered in the strong wind. Lin's son, Ahu's beautiful eyes opened wide while she revealed pleasant surprise. Leave it to me. On the stone steps, Lin Sun's black eyes were terrifyingly cold, surging with abyss-like killing intent. On the opposite side, Voidling Kuan also showed a touch of surprise, and then he frowned. Oh, I didn't expect you to come so fast. On the higher stone steps, when Qingxue sighed softly in her heart. Just one step away. But Lin's son came here. Brother Voidling, we've lost the chance. It's time to leave. When Qingxue turned around and went up without any hesitation, because she knew very well that this was not the best time to fight with Lin's son. I'll get even with you later. Voidling Kuan snorted coldly, glanced at Lin's son, and was about to turn around and leave. Go. Did I allow you to go? With a cold and indifferent voice, Lin's son made his move. Bang! His punch was like a big abyss swallowing the sky, extremely domineering. You're courting death. Voidling Kuan's face darkened, and he suddenly stretched out his body. His eyes were like golden lightning, and he clenched his fist to meet Lin Sun's punch. The power of this punch was different again. It was full of monstrous chi and blood, bright and blazing, condensing dense Taoist patterns of law. It was like a god of war coming from the sky. At this moment, as if the sun and the moon had collided, the terrible fist force exploded in the void, and the light flowed, illuminating the ancient bluestone steps. Lin Sun and Voidling Kuan each took a step back. But this step back was completely different. Under the tempering power of the pilgrimage power, Lin Sun was like a boat sailing against the current, so it was not a big deal for him to be knocked back a step. But Voidling Kuan was walking in the opposite direction, like the wind and the current. The step he was knocked back was actually a step forward toward the pilgrimage power. It could be imagined that if the two of them had exchanged positions, Voidling Kuan would have been at a disadvantage in this blow. Voidling Kuan's face changed slightly, and he also realized the gap of this step. You said that your divine soul is like a saber? Lin Sun said lightly. As he spoke, he stepped forward calmly. But Voidling Kuan's hair stood on end, as if he had been stared at by a primordial fierce beast, and he realized that something was wrong. Retreat. He was unwilling to waste any more time. With a flicker, he turned into a golden ray and flew toward the top of the pilgrimage road. With a whoosh, Lin Sun chased after Voidling Kuan. His speed was not fast, but he had surprisingly arrived behind Voidling Kuan like a flickering light and a passing shadow, transcending the shackles. Piss off. Voidling Kuan was indeed a peerless overlord ranked 13th on the Starry Sky Great Saints list. He did not panic at all under such circumstances. He clenched his fist and charged at Lin Sun with an unimaginably terrifying force and ferocious momentum. Great Void Fist. Voidling Kuan had used his secret method to activate the potential of his blood and chi in this punch. The seemingly simple punch was actually powerful enough to shatter mountains and rivers and overturn the sun and moon. Boom! The tempering energy that covered the path of pilgrimage was actually shattered by this one punch, turning into a chaotic flow that scattered in all directions. It was so powerful that it was a complete mess. Lin Sun did not dodge. A mountain of swords suddenly rushed out of his body. Bang! The mountain of swords was instantly shattered, but more and more mountains of swords emerged one after another, each covered in brilliant sword intent. Bang, bang, bang. In the ear-piercing sound of collisions, the earth-evil sword mountains collapsed one by one, turning into a rain of light. But in the end, the power of Voidling Kuan's punch was disintegrated and obliterated first. With a roar like the tide and the sea, the mountains of swords rushed down, causing Voidling Kuan to feel flustered. He shouted again and again, attacking with all his might. By the time the power of the 72 earth-evil sword mountains had been dissolved, he was already in a mess. His hair was disheveled, and his clothes were ragged, all cut by the sword chi. His face was gloomy, and there was anger between his eyebrows. Boom! But before he could react, Lin Sun had already charged at him. His body was like a great abyss, and he performed his own method. A casual blow from him contained unparalleled power. In just an instant, the two had fought dozens of times. Since they could not use any treasures or fly into the air, the battle between the two was completely a head-on collision. A moment later, Voidling Kuan staggered, and Lin Sun hit him on the shoulder. His flesh and blood splattered, and his bones cracked. He groaned in pain, and his expression finally changed. Only when he really fought with Lin Sun did he realize how terrible Lin Sun was. You said that your heart is like a stone, unshakable. Lin Sun's black eyes became colder and colder. As he moved forward, his spirit, chi, and spirit were all roaring, like the sound of Tao, deafening. Voidling Kuan's eyes were cold, and he used all his strength. Boom! His body was burning like a golden flame, turning into a height of several meters. He raised his fist like a mountain, and his power was much more terrible than just now. But in just a moment, he was hit by Lin Sun's palm. The heart protection mirror covering his chest wailed and cracked. Blood spurted out of Voidling Kuan's mouth and nose, and his figure was shaken several higher stone steps. Ahu couldn't help but gasp. It was not easy to move forward on the pilgrimage road. If one wanted to step on a stone step, one must have the strength to fight against it. But now, Voidling Kuan was shaken several stone steps away. Just what kind of terrifying power was required to achieve this? You said that your body is like the sky, unstoppable. Lin Sun moved forward, his clothes fluttering in the wind. He was like a god of slaughter coming out of the abyss, giving off an overbearing aura. Voidling Kuan was both shocked and angry, as if he couldn't believe it and couldn't accept it. He probably didn't expect that Lin Sun's combat power was so strong and terrible. But in the end, he gritted his teeth and continued to flee on the pilgrimage road. The pilgrimage platform was just above, and he didn't want to fight with Lin Sun now. Do you think you can escape? How could Lin Sun let him escape? His cold eyes flashed like lightning, and he caught up with him. The pilgrimage path was like a peerless tempering. All along the way, it was unknown how many experts had walked with great difficulty, and every single step they ascended required a great deal of effort. Some were even suppressed to the point that they couldn't move and had to give up. But now, a tragic chase had broken out on this ancient bluestone path. Even the power of the trial couldn't stop Voidling Kuan from fleeing desperately, while Lin Sun chased after him. Before, Lin Sun had seen that it seemed that Voidling Kuan was fighting against Ahu alone, but in fact, he was working with Wen Qingxue. Therefore, this time, Voidling Kuan had to die as well. Chapter 1843. At the highest point of Kunlun Hill, a five-color Tao altar stood there as if it had existed since ancient times. It was suffused with a mottled aura of time, mysterious and solemn. Around the altar was a spacious plateau on the peak of the mountain. This was one of the three forbidden areas of Kunlun, the Zen conferral platform. Standing on it was like standing outside the sky. As far as the eye could see, it was a vast universe that was deep and cold, and countless stars flickered within it. The magnificence of a universe was something that ordinary people had no chance of seeing or imagining. Even cultivators could only look up at the starry sky. Very few could truly see the true appearance of a universe. The starry sky was vast, and the universe seemed boundless. No matter how large one was as tiny as a speck of dust in the depths of the universe. Cultivators liked to comprehend the Tao and observe the heavenly phenomena. The so-called heavenly phenomena were nothing more than a corner of the boundless universe. Only by truly coming into contact with it and observing the vast universe would one know how vast the universe was. It was enough to shock any living being in the world. At this moment, there were only 7 or 8 figures standing on the vast plateau at the peak of Kunlun Hill. Among them were Zhuanyu Heng, Hua Xingli, and the others. Rumor has it that standing here and looking up at the universe will allow one to truly sense the most essential profundities of the great Tao. Someone spoke softly with a misty gaze. The opportunity for our Saint Tao conferral ceremony is hidden within. Whoever can comprehend it first will be able to ascend the 5-colored Tao altar and obtain the sage energy bestowed by the heavens. From there, they will transform from a saint to a sage. In the universe, stars flickered. Some were bright, some were dim, some seemed close at hand, and some were unreachable. From afar, it gave off a vast, silent, and solemn atmosphere. There are only 2 methods for the Saint Tao conferral ceremony. Those who can comprehend the wishes of all living beings in the world can obtain the power of all living beings and use their own Tao to verify the heavens. Those who open up a new path for future generations can achieve the great Tao conferral ceremony. However, neither of these 2 paths is easy. Someone frowned and pondered. That should be the Tao steel of ascension. Each one of them is like a star that guards the sky in the 90,000-meter wide universe. With this Tao steel, one will be able to obtain the karmic luck that belongs to the Kunlun ruins. It will be of incredible help when one attains the Tao and becomes an emperor in the future. Zhuanyu said, his eyes filled with divine light as he stared at the sky. There were numerous stone tablets floating there, and they emanated different rays of light and auras. Some were boundless, some were condensed, some were unrestrained like fire, some were deep like water, and some were fierce and terrifying like swords. These were left behind by the peerless figures who had passed the pilgrimage path and reached the peak of the mountain, successfully completing the pilgrimage path. These stone tablets were like historical records that recorded legends. They represented supreme fortune and glory. Almost all the experts who reached the pilgrimage platform wanted to leave their names there. Unfortunately, I wonder exactly where the legendary secret to becoming an emperor or progenitor is hidden, and if it really exists. Hua Xingli sighed. Becoming an emperor or an ancestor. even if such a secret was very far away from them. Who wouldn't be moved after hearing it? Whoosh! Suddenly, a graceful figure flew to the top of the mountain. In the rain of light, when Qing Shui's beautiful face was revealed, many people looked at her with different expressions. They all knew that when Qing Shui and Kuan Su Ling had cooperated to ambush on the pilgrimage path in order to capture Hu and threaten Lin Sun. But it seemed that when Qing Shui had not succeeded, she still looked indifferent, but her delicate and beautiful eyebrows were furrowed. It was obvious that she had encountered some difficulties. Moreover, Kuan Su did not appear with her. Fairy Wen Qing Shui, where is fellow practitioner Su? Someone couldn't help asking. He will come up in a moment. Wen Qing Shui answered indifferently. Among those present, she only knew Zhuan Yuheng, Hua Xingli, and the others. She had heard of each other's names, but they were not friends. Speaking of which, standing on the pilgrimage platform, they were still competitors. It's a pity that Meng Yi. Wen Qing Shui sighed in her heart. If Meng Yi had not died, with Kuan Su's help, she was absolutely confident that she could capture and kill Lin Sun. But now, the situation had become different. She looked at the vast universe in the sky and took a deep breath. She suppressed the melancholy in her heart and began to sense with her mind. Her top priority was to comprehend the mysteries of the great way hidden in the vast universe in order to seek an opportunity. The pilgrimage path. Seeing this, the others withdrew their gazes. Although Wen Qing Shui was a fairy whose name had shaken the ancient path of the starry sky, who was not a peerless giant, the forbidden area of the pilgrimage platform had blocked the footsteps of countless martial cultivators, and the pilgrimage path had ruined the hopes of countless strong practitioners. In the end, only 7 or 8 of them could stand out and reach the pilgrimage path. These people with terrifying backgrounds and extraordinary strength would naturally not get close to Wen Qing Shui just because they admired her beauty. After all, at this moment, they were competitors. However, less than a moment after Wen Qing Shui arrived, an angry voice sounded from the pilgrimage path below. "You've gone too far." The voice was like thunder, transmitted through the chaotic qi. Wen Qing Shui's beautiful eyes shrank at once. With a clang, she took out an ancient sword that seemed to be made of white jade. It shone brightly and exuded a sharp aura. Taiwu Taoist sword. This was a famous ancient treasure on the ancient path of the starry sky. It was one of the 7 Taoist swords inherited by the Panwu Taoist court. Although it was not a sovereign weapon, it had the aura of the sovereign realm, which was much stronger than the life saint weapon. Seeing that when Qing Shui was facing a formidable enemy and even took out her trump card, the eyes of Zhuan Yuheng, Hua Xingli, and others flashed, and they vaguely guessed some facts. Wen Qing Shui didn't care about these at all. There was a mysterious power of great way on the pilgrimage path, which prevented all treasures and external forces from being used. But on the pilgrimage path, it was completely different. The mysterious power of tempering had long disappeared, and naturally, there was no power to suppress it. This was also the reason why when Qing Shui was so decisive and wanted to reach the top of the mountain as soon as possible, because she really didn't have much confidence in suppressing Lin Sun with her own combat power. However, if she had some trump cards, it would be a different story. Damn it. Soon, Voidling Kuan's voice was heard again, filled with anger and hatred. Almost as soon as he finished speaking, a golden ray suddenly rushed up the pilgrimage path with a loud bang, and Voidling Kuan's majestic figure appeared. However, his hair was disheveled, and his face was livid and ferocious. He seemed to be in a sorry state. It was obvious that he had been chased all the way here. Many people's eyelids twitched when they saw this. Voidling Kuan was a peerless overlord ranked 13th on the Starry Sky Great Saints ranking. Who would have thought that even he would be chased to such a sorry state? Now, where else can you run to? An indifferent, cold voice sounded. Whoosh! Almost at the same time, everyone looked in the direction of the pilgrimage path. They saw Lin Sun, who was wearing a moon-white robe, walking toward them. His figure was as straight as a sword, and his black eyes were surging with a terrifying cold flicker. Many people's expressions changed. It was him, Lin Sun. Even Zhuan Yuheng and Hua Xingli could not help but narrow their eyes. Previously, at the foot of the Kunlun Hill, Lin Sun had fought alone against a group of experts and defeated Wen Qingxiu, Meng Yi, and many others. But now, he had chased Voidling Kuan all the way here, and the latter was in a sorry state. This undoubtedly proved that in a head-on battle, even a peerless overlord like Voidling Kuan was no match for Lin Sun. If that was the case, how strong was Lin Sun's current combat strength? Thinking of this, some people's expressions became even more solemn. As soon as he stepped onto the pilgrimage path, Lin Sun glanced around and saw the ancient five-colored Taoist altar, the vast universe above his head, and the figures of everyone present. At the same time, he also noticed that the mysterious tempering force was gone. His whole body felt relaxed, and he could use his treasures now. This could be seen from the mysterious Taoist sword that Ji Xingyao had taken out. In the end, he fixed his eyes on Voidling Kuan again and said, "Didn't you want to settle the score? This place is very suitable." Then he glanced at Wen Qingxue and said, "And you, it's time to settle the score between the past and the present." His voice was casual, but it was arrogant and domineering. Everyone had different expressions on their faces. Their eyes flickered, but no one said anything. It was not because they were intimidated, but because they didn't want to get involved in this storm. Lin Sun might not belong to any force on the starry ancient path, but he had no grudges with these people. In such a situation of snatching opportunities, they would not be hot-headed and attack Lin Sun with Voidling Kuan and Wen Qingxue. Even Hua Xingli did the same. Xue Qingyi was only his subordinate, and his suggestion could not affect his attitude and will. Settle the score? Fine. Voidling Kuan's face was livid. With a bang, he took out a huge white bone halberd, which was surrounded by the dazzling power of law and shone brightly. Without a doubt, this was an incredible treasure. Swish! He waved the halberd and slashed it angrily, setting off a storm all over the sky. Almost at the same time, Wen Qingxue, who had been waiting for a long time, also took action without hesitation. She manipulated the Taiwu Taoist sword and turned it into a white jade rainbow, breaking through the air and slashing. Both of them had their own trump cards. Now that they joined forces, they were naturally not afraid of Lin Sun. Humph! Lin Sun's face was as cold as ever. Holding the Avicii sword and the Yuan-Tu sword in each hand, he jumped up. The people nearby all avoided them and watched from afar. On this world-famous pilgrimage platform, many bloody battles had broken out in the past years. No one was surprised by the battle between Lin Sun and Voidling Kuan, but they were also curious about whether Lin Sun, who was all alone, would survive to the end, or when Qingxue and Voidling Kuan would win. Boom! The battle broke out without any suspense. For a moment, the ancient, solemn, and silent atmosphere on the pilgrimage platform was completely broken. Horrible sword chi crisscrossed, and divine light burst out. It was an unprecedented battle. Chapter 1844. Clang! The hellish Avicii sword collided with the white bone halberd, producing a soul-piercing sound that reverberated in all directions. Amidst the explosion of divine light, Voidling Kuan was knocked back. Before Lin Sun could continue his attack, the Taiwu Taoist sword, which was like a white jade rainbow, pierced through the air and let out a sharp howl. Lin Sun waved the Yuan killer sword to meet it head-on. In an instant, the two had fought hundreds of times. Every time they clashed, there was an earth-shattering power that caused the battlefield to rumble endlessly. When Qingxue's body trembled slightly, and her beautiful face showed a rare solemnity. On the other hand, Lin Sun's momentum was like a rainbow, and his movements were like lightning. Even under the pincer attack of Voidling Kuan and Wen Qingxue, he was still unstoppable. His whole body was like a boiling abyss. The spectators in the distance all held their breath and paid close attention to all this. Lin Sun's strength made them all awestruck. Similarly, the cooperation between Voidling Kuan and Wen Qingxue also amazed them. Kill! With a roar, Voidling Kuan's long hair fluttered in the wind. His eyes were like the scorching sun, and he waved the white bone halberd, setting off a violent Taoist light. Every attack could easily kill an ordinary peerless sage in the outside world. His murderous intent was monstrous. After all, he was a peerless overlord ranked 13th on the Starry Sky Great Sage list. The Taoism and magic he had mastered were far from ordinary. But no matter how fierce his attacks were, Lin Sun always met them head-on, forcing Voidling Kuan to run into a wall again and again. This made his expression change. He was both angry and shocked, and the power around him grew stronger. As for one Qingxue, her fighting skills were also unparalleled. She wielded the Taiwu Taoist sword like it was her own arm, performing the secret sword scriptures. Its power was unparalleled, and the sword chi was dense, just like a white rainbow piercing through the sun. But in front of Lin Sun, her attacks were like a mountain torrent meeting a sluice gate, or a dragon trapped in a deep abyss, repeatedly suppressed. In the field, people like Zhuan Yuheng, Hua Xingli, and the others all looked solemn. They were thinking and comparing in their hearts, how would they deal with Lin Sun? Similarly, if they were Voidling Kuan or Wen Qingxue, how would they fight Lin Sun? The more they compared, the more solemn their expressions became. He was sure that even if such a battle occurred on the ancient path in the starry sky, it could absolutely be said to be unprecedented. After all, a peerless ruler like Zuling Kuan was as rare as a phoenix feather or a Qilin horn. It was also extremely rare to see such a powerful man like Lin Sun. As for one Qingxue, her current ranking seemed to be only in the top 100 of the Starry Sky Great Saints list, but the combat strength she displayed was also an eye-opener. Rise! After a while, when Qingxue let out an obscure Dao voice, whoosh! A broken sword that was mottled with rust flashed out, and only the tip of the sword remained. However, when it appeared, it emanated circle after circle of scarlet red ripples of sword chi that dyed this expanse of space red. Emperor's aura. This shouldn't be a broken Emperor's sword, right? Someone cried out in alarm. On the other hand, the bodies of some people even stiffened while a chill ran down their spines. They felt a strand of bone-piercing coldness and threat from the tip of this sword. Kill. One Qingxue looked solemn and drew a line with her fingers. The mottled tip of the sword flashed gently in the void. It seemed to be extremely slow, but in an instant it appeared between Lin Sun's eyebrows and stabbed at him fiercely. The seemingly slow but actually fast scene made people want to cough up blood. Clang! The broken blade stored in the sea of consciousness between Lin Sun's eyebrows suddenly swept out and accurately hit the tip of the sword. When the two collided, the broken blade trembled and was shaken away. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Lin Sun's figure had already disappeared and appeared in another place. But there was also a touch of surprise between his eyebrows. This broken tip of the sword was obviously an extremely great treasure, suspected to be an incomplete emperor's treasure. Whoosh! The tip of the sword flashed, setting off a circle of scarlet sword chi ripples, and rushed at Lin Sun again. Almost at the same time, Zuling Kuan let out a roar and attacked from the other side. An endless cold current burst out from his white bone halberd, which was covered with dense Taoist patterns and faintly resounding Dao sounds. All the onlookers couldn't help but hold their breath at this time. This series of attacks was as fast as lightning and extremely dangerous. Boom! In the deafening roar, everyone clearly saw a blood-stained bronze shield appear in front of Lin Sun. This was an ancient treasure obtained by Lin Sun from the Son of Hell. Its origin was unknown, and its defensive power was amazing. But in just a moment, it burst into pieces. Like before, Lin Sun seized the opportunity to launch a counterattack. The three treasures, Avicii's sword, Yuan Killer Sword, and the Broken Blade, attacked Zuling Kuan together. Normally, Zuling Kuan's combat power was a level higher than Wen Qingxue's, but now it was different. The mysterious sword tip of Wen Qingxue was extremely lethal, which affected Lin Sun to a certain extent. Therefore, Lin Sun planned to kill Zuling Kuan first, and then Wen Qingxue. Zuling Kuan's pupils shrank, and he resisted with all his strength without hesitation. But after only one confrontation, he was shaken back, and the blood and qi in his body tumbled. If he hadn't dodged in time, his cheek would have been cut by the broken blade, which made him look a little embarrassed. He was furious and roared, "Do you think I don't have any hidden treasures?" With a flick of his sleeve, an antique scroll unfurled in the void. There were 16 flying daggers drawn on the scroll. Some were white and slender, like flying streamers. Some were as black as ink, looming in the darkness. Some turned into a golden flame, sprinkling bits of knife light. Every single flying knife was lifelike and revealed a different scene. They were extremely miraculous, and their might was terrifying and awe-inspiring to the extreme. 16 pictures of Emperor's saber from the Su family. Many people were shocked as they recognized the origins of this painting. It was personally drawn by the ancestor of the Su clan, one of the 7 great demon emperors, Demon Emperor Su, and it was branded with the will, essence, energy, and spirit of an emperor. Once the 16 flying knives appeared, they could kill ghosts and gods and crack the sky. Virtual light. As Zuling Kuan shouted, a flying knife as slender as flowing light flew out of the scroll and cut at Lin Sun. Its speed was not incredible, but it was illusory and impossible to capture. Clang! Lin Sun fought against it with a broken blade. The collision of the two made Lin Sun's body shake slightly, and his pupils couldn't help but narrow. Darkness. Kuan's face was cold. Another black flying knife swept out, like a shadow in the darkness, and cut at Lin Sun. Hidden fire, crow shadow, broken chasm, frost rush. This was not the end. In the following time, Void Spirit Kuan released 10 flying knives in one breath, all of which were aimed at Lin Sun. Each flying knife had its own unique magic. As soon as the 10 flying knives appeared, the void was full of magnificent and unpredictable knife light. In the distance, Zhuan Yuheng and others were secretly shocked and gasped. This was 16 pictures of Emperor's saber, a masterpiece of Xu Hong, demonic emperor. In a flash, Lin Sun was in a dangerous situation. The most terrible thing was that when Qing Xue didn't stay idle, she controlled the Taiwu Taoist sword and the mysterious sword point to deal with Lin Sun. Anyone who witnessed this scene would definitely feel their scalp go numb and fear arise in their hearts. In fact, Lin Sun was indeed in danger at the moment. The range of his flickering movement was constantly being suppressed and reduced. Although Broken Blade, Avicii's sword, and Yuanta's sword were strong, they were not emperor weapons. At present, it was difficult for them to compete with the mysterious sword point and 16 pictures of Emperor's saber. This was the help of external forces. It was impossible for peerless figures like Kuan and Wen Qingxue to not have some hidden treasures. These external forces alone were enough to help them avoid danger when they met an invincible opponent. At this point, Kuan and Wen Qingxue breathed a sigh of relief and felt much more at ease. They tried everything they could and finally began to suppress Lin Sun, which refreshed their spirits. Kill! The two would not miss such a good opportunity. Without any pause, their attacks were even fiercer than before. It seemed that they wanted to kill Lin Sun completely. The eyes of the onlookers flickered. On the road of cultivation, one could only rely on himself. But in a battle, external forces were also part of one's strength. This was an irrefutable truth since ancient times. Obviously, when Qingxue and Kuan had the advantage in external forces at this moment. But before they could rejoice, Lin Sun, who seemed to be dwarfed by Kuan and Wen Qingxue, suddenly sneered. I had planned to compete with you in terms of cultivation so that you could die in peace, but your performance has really disappointed me. His words were full of sarcasm. The next moment, a pagoda emerged from Lin Sun's body. The pagoda, which seemed to be made of glazed gold, shone brightly at this moment. The onlookers only felt a tingling pain in their eyes. A vast, ancient, and vast aura spread. It was just a pagoda, but it gave them a kind of supreme power that was about to suppress the past, present, and future. At this moment, all the treasures that attacked Lin Sun, including 16 pictures of Emperor's saber, Taiwu Taoism sword, and the mysterious sword point, seemed to be suppressed. They trembled in the void and felt sluggish. This, Kuan and Wen Qingshue's pupils shrank at the same time, and their faces changed. Do you think that only you have trump card in your hands? I, Lin Sun, have never lost in a competition of external objects. In a cold voice, the pagoda floating above Lin Sun's head launched a counterattack. Boom! The pagoda glowed, spewing out thousands of golden lights, each of which was golden, with sacred, blazing, and brilliant power. The mysterious sword tip let out a mournful wail as it was sent flying by the shockwave without accomplishing anything. The flying sabers that were coming at Lin Sun couldn't get close to Lin Sun, as if they had hit a wall in the earth-shattering roar. This meant that when Qingxue and Voidling Kuan's biggest trump card was suppressed by Lin Sun. What treasure is this? Is it the pagoda that disappeared in the Taoism battle of the emperors? Impossible. That pagoda has been destroyed long ago, and it will never appear again. Zhuan Yuheng, Hua Xingli, and others also changed their faces. The power of this pagoda made them feel a burst of palpitations and depression. It was too magical and extraordinary. Go to hell. At this time, Lin Sun had already rushed at Kuan with his sword. His speed was incredibly fast, and his power was also overwhelming like a landslide and tsunami. Kuan roared, but it was too late to dodge. He could only fight with all his strength. In an instant, his body was chopped away. His 7 apertures were bleeding, and he saw stars. His tendons and bones were almost broken. He groaned in pain. Chapter 1845. Puff. Voidling Kuan's body hit the ground hard, and he coughed up blood. He was seriously injured. There was a dead silence. Everyone was shocked. The mighty Voidling Kuan, a peerless overlord, was obviously being suppressed. You can't compete with external objects, and you can't compete with your own cultivation either. In the field, Lin Sun's eyes were as deep as an abyss. His clothes and long hair fluttered in the wind, and the tower of Endless Way floated above his head. As he spoke, he charged at Voidling Kuan again. Slash! One Qingxue attacked from one side. Her sword chi was dense and fierce, like a rainbow flying out of the sky. It was a pity that the mysterious sword tip had been firmly pinned down. One Qingxue's own combat power was not enough for Lin Sun. Boom! Lin Sun didn't even look at her. He slashed his sword, and when Qingxue was blown away with her sword, her beautiful face turned pale. There was another commotion in the field. Slash! At the same time, the broken blade swept up with peerless sharpness. The first cut of heaven. However, after merging with Lin Sun's cultivation method, this slash was no longer the same. It had the power to suppress everything and cleanse the universe. Open! Voidling Kuan's eyes widened in anger. He roared and waved the bone halberd. The muscles on his body bulged while he emanated surging golden divine radiance, and his imposing aura was terrifying to the extreme. He'd exerted all his strength. Clang! The void shook, and the collision was like thunder in the ninth heaven. Void Spirit Kuan's bone halberd was blasted out of his hand, and he was pushed back again. A terrifying bloody gash had been torn open on his body by the fierce blade of the halberd. The expressions of the people in the field changed constantly. The situation changed too fast. Lin Sun was originally suppressed by Voidling Kuan and Wen Qingxue with their treasures, and was in danger. But when Lin Sun also fought with external objects, the situation became completely different. Slash! At this time, Lin Sun was as cold and decisive as the wind. He didn't give Voidling Kuan a chance to breathe at all. The snow-white, broken blade was like a dream, flowing with mysterious Taoist patterns. Its sharpness was so strong that it seemed to cut the sky open. Everyone, if anyone helps me kill this guy, I will repay you in the future. Void Spirit Kuan roared in panic. From the pilgrimage path to this pilgrimage platform, they were chased by Lin Sun. Now, even if they joined hands with Wen Qingxue, they were still no match for Lin Sun. This cruel reality dealt Void Spirit Kuan a heavy blow. His voice rang out, causing many people's eyes to flicker, but in the end, no one responded. Whether it was Zhuan Yu Heng, Hua Xingli, or anyone else, how could they interfere in such a matter? Originally, they were in a competitive relationship. It didn't matter to them whether Lin Sun died, or if Void Spirit and Kuan were defeated in this battle. Boom! At this moment, Void Spirit Kuan was blasted flying once more. His body had cracked apart while fresh blood flowed from it, and he was in an extremely miserable and sorry state. "I'll kill you!" The Void Spirit Kuan roared, its eyes bloodshot as it struggled like a trapped beast on the verge of death. His body seemed to be on fire, emitting a terrifying aura. "Kill!" he roared, and a dagger appeared in his hand as he dashed forward. Buzz! This dagger was illusory, instantly breaking through the sound barrier. Its speed became faster and faster, leaving only a faint shadow behind, as if it could ignore the laws of space. The blade of exterminating spirit. This was a mysterious and unfathomable ominous treasure, which had been infused with primordial essence gold and a wisp of Emperor Realm aura. Even the body of a king of sages could break through the air with it. Everyone could see that Void Spirit Kuan was going all out, and he even wanted to die together with Lin Sun. Lin Sun took a deep breath and didn't dodge. The Avicii sword and the Yuan-Tu sword intertwined in the void and slashed out together. It was like drawing an E character in the air. He meant death. This was not only the oldest character, but also the most primitive and simple Taoist pattern. But this time, it turned into the purest, simplest, and most direct attack under Lin Sun's sword. There was a clang. The blade of exterminating spirit, which had unpredictable killing power, was blocked at the intersection of the E character, as if it had hit a natural barrier. It couldn't even stab in, let alone kill. The Avicii sword and the Yuan sword were also the swords of Mingyi's Sword Emperor before he proved Tao. How could they be ordinary? How is it possible? Void Spirit Kuan's eyes widened in disbelief. His heart was in turmoil, and he was horrified. But he had no time to think. Boom! Lin Sun's attack was extremely simple, but it was also condensed and fierce to the extreme. In the deafening roar, the blade of exterminating spirit was smashed away, wailing incessantly. Void Spirit Kuan's body was split by the E character. His hands and feet were cut off, scattering in the void, and blood poured down like a waterfall. Until he died, Void Spirit Kuan let out a scream of pain and fear. But the sound stopped abruptly. The sword chi that invaded his body wreaked havoc, completely cutting off his soul and vitality. At this point, Void Spirit Kuan was dead. But Lin Sun only arrived at the pilgrimage platform for a moment, and he killed Void Spirit Kuan in a 1 versus 2 situation. His strength was unbelievably strong. Hiss! Everyone sucked in a cold breath. Void Spirit Kuan, a peerless overlord ranked 13th on the Starry Sky Great Sage list, was killed on the pilgrimage platform like this? Who would believe it if it was spread out? It was not until this moment that everyone present deeply realized the horror of Lin Sun. Only an invincible cultivator in the Great Sage realm could have such incredible combat strength, right? Some people's hearts trembled as they thought of the top 5 on the Starry Sky Great Sage list, who were widely recognized as invincible great sages under the starry sky. However, no one could associate the word invincible with a young man like Lin Sun from the ancient Desolation realm. Whoosh! In the dead silence, when Qingxue suddenly turned around and dashed toward the pilgrimage path at an incredible speed. Not only did she give up the chance to perform the pilgrimage path, but she also gave up the mysterious sword tip that was suppressed by the Great Way without End Tower. She was extremely decisive and efficient. Obviously, Void Spirit Kuan's death made her realize how terrifying Lin Sun was. Lin Sun turned around and was about to chase after her. On the pilgrimage path, a beautiful figure in a yellow dress appeared and blocked in front of Wen Qingxue, as if she was waiting for a rabbit to come to her. This person was none other than Ahu. Whoosh! A wisp of purple sword chi swept out from her palm and slashed at Wen Qingxue. Wen Qingxue frowned and tried her best to block it with Taiwu Taoist sword. But the battle was over before it started. Wen Qingxue's body was lifted up by a big hand from behind by her snow-white neck. At this moment, Wen Qingxue, who had always been calm and indifferent like an otherworldly fairy, finally had a change of expression. She struggled hard, but she suddenly stopped breathing. She only felt that the big hand pinching her neck exerted force, and the terrible power invaded her body from the fingertips like a landslide and a tsunami, completely suppressing and confining all the power in her body. For a moment, her beautiful face was flushed like sunset. She frowned, and her face was full of shock and anger. Look, this fairy is so charming even when she is angry. No wonder she is pursued by so many people on the starry sky ancient path. Lin Sun's cold and sarcastic voice came from behind. Wen Qingxue's heart was filled with unspeakable shame, anger, and hatred. She said coldly, "Lin Sun, I lost. You can kill me if you want." There was silence in the field. Zhuan Yu Heng, Hua Xingli, and others were a little stunned. Wen Qingxue, the descendant of Panwu Taoist court, the third fairy on the Starry Sky Beauty list and the top 100 on the Starry Sky Great Saints list, was a peerless girl. She was peerless and famous. She was very popular and had many admirers on the Starry Sky ancient path. Not to mention ordinary cultivators. Even some peerless geniuses would show her respect and adoration when they saw her. But at this time, she was held up by Lin Sun by the neck like a chick. This scene was undoubtedly very shocking. "Kill you." Lin Sun's black eyes were cold. With a bang, he threw Wen Qingxue to the ground. "No, it will only be too easy for you." Ahu beside him also thought deeply. Death is very simple. We can't let her off easily. When Qingxue's clear eyes were fixed, "What are you going to do?" Ahu smiled sweetly, blinked her eyes, and said, "You are a famous fairy on the ancient path of the starry sky. Wherever you go, you attract countless admirers. But if you let them know that the fairy they love has suddenly been banished to the mortal world, how would they feel? Abolish my cultivation?" Wen Qingxue's pretty face changed slightly. Some of the experts present even sucked in a breath of cold air. This was too ruthless. It was not easy to cultivate. It was even more difficult to stand out among countless competitors and let Wen Qingxue have today's cultivation, reputation, and status. If her cultivation was abolished, it would be no less than a heavy blow that was enough to make people collapse. At that time, without her cultivation, she was bound to be an existence that was like an ant in this world of cultivation that was filled with intense competition. All her status and reputation would vanish. At that time, how would Panwu Taoist court regard Wen Qingxue, who had become a waste, and how would those strong men who had admired Wen Qingxue on the starry sky ancient path regard her? But Ahu said with a smile, "It's not enough to abolish your cultivation. What if you are so lucky that you can re-enter the path of Tao?" Wen Qingxue's heart sank, and she had a bad premonition. Sure enough, in the next moment, Ahu said, "In my opinion, you are so beautiful and have such a noble bearing. You can be sent to some brothel. At the very least, you could be a prostitute. At that time, I believe that there will definitely be many people who adore you and fight to be the first to patronize your business." Her voice was soft, low, and carried a smile, but when it entered into Wen Qingxue's ears, every single word was like the coldest and sharpest awl in the world that fiercely pierced into her heart, causing her body to tremble with rage, terror, and panic. Even Zhuan Yu Heng and the others felt cold in their hearts. Once a woman made things difficult for another woman, she would usually be even more ruthless than a man. At this moment, it was not enough that Wen Qingxue, a famous genius in the starry sky, was threatened to abolish her cultivation, and she was even threatened to be thrown into prostitution and become a prostitute. This was countless times crueler than directly killing Wen Qingxue. Chapter 1846. Wen Qingxue's face was gloomy. No matter how high her cultivation was, how beautiful her appearance was, and how extraordinary her background was, when she became a prisoner and her fate was completely out of her control, her state of mind was doomed to be unable to remain calm. Brother Lin, do you blame me for being vicious? Oh suddenly looked at Lin Sun. Lin Sun was stunned and couldn't help laughing. He raised his hand and pressed it on Wen Qingshue's head. The palm force roared and rushed into Wen Qingshue's body like a landslide and a tsunami. Bang! The chaotic hole in her body exploded. Following that, all the acupoints in her body were destroyed as easily as crushing dry weeds. It was visible to the naked eye that when Qingshue's breath weakened at an incredible speed, like a shining pearl, she lost her spirituality and luster. Wen Qingxue was stunned as if she was struck by lightning. Even though she was in great pain, it was far less than the blow she suffered in her mind. She didn't expect that Lin Sun would suddenly attack her so fiercely that she didn't even have time to react. In the distance, Zhuan Yuheng, Hua Xingli, and others were also shocked. This guy really destroyed Wen Qingxue? They couldn't help but feel a strand of intense fear arise in their hearts when they acted without the slightest scruple and fearless style. Under the gazes of the crowd, when Qingshue's glossy black hair turned snow white, and her white and tender skin seemed to have lost its vitality and became shriveled. In just a few breaths, when Qingxue seemed to have aged countless years, with wrinkled skin and white hair and a stooped figure. Losing her cultivation was like breaking the longevity bridge. This stunning fairy who was famous throughout the starry sky had turned into an old woman. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, no one would have thought that such an old woman was the fairy who was pursued and adored by countless people. Youth passed away in an instant, and beauty aged in a snap. Such a blow was undoubtedly more painful than death for any woman, especially for a peerless figure like Wen Qingxue, who had enjoyed endless glory. It was cruel torture to the extreme. When Qingxue screamed with a face full of confusion, pain, anger, and resentment. Hearing her voice, many people sighed in their hearts. In the all heavens, if one lost their cultivation, then no matter how amazing and extraordinary one was in the past, everything they possessed would vanish in a thin air in the end. This was the reality. It wasn't just happening at this moment, and it wasn't just happening to Wen Qingxue. It had happened countless times in the past. Now, do you think I'm evil? Lin Sun asked Ahu with a smile, without looking at Wen Qingxue. Ahu's beautiful eyes glistened as she gave him a thumbs up and said, Brother Lin, if news of your ruthless methods of destroying a flower were to spread, then it would absolutely make those fairies in the starry sky tremble with fear, and they wouldn't dare go against you again. Lin Sun, aren't you too cruel? At this time, someone couldn't help but snort coldly with a look of disgust. He was extremely disgusted by Lin Sun's action of crippling Wen Qingxue. Lin Sun looked up and saw a young man in colorful clothes with a spirit feather crown on his head. He was handsome and had an extraordinary bearing. Cruel? Do you know how many methods this woman has used to kill me ever since she entered the Kunlun ruins? Lin Sun revealed a mocking expression. Of course, you don't care about that. What you care about is that she lost her beauty and became a cripple because of me, right? Ahu also smiled and said, Since you feel so sorry for this fairy Qingxue, why didn't you make a move just now? Of course, it's not too late now. Why don't I be a matchmaker and betroth her to you now? How about we get married on the pilgrimage platform? Many people felt a chill in their hearts. Right now, Wen Qingxue was no different from an old woman, but Ahu said that on purpose. Ew. The young man in colorful clothes was furious. Ahu sneered. You what? You're just a guy who only cares about appearances. Even if Wen Qingxue lost her beauty, aren't you still unwilling to get close to her? You have a sharp tongue. I can't be bothered with you. The young man in colorful clothes took a deep breath and snorted coldly. The eyes of Zhuan Yuheng, Hua Xingli, and the rest flickered. They could tell that the young man in colorful clothes chose to endure because he was afraid of Lin Sun. After thinking about it, it made sense. In the battle just now, Void Spirit Koan was killed and Wen Qingxue was crippled. Anyone who wanted to challenge Lin Sun at this time would probably have to consider the consequences. At this moment, Wen Qingxue, who was crawling on the ground, suddenly raised her head and said with a venomous expression, Lin Sun, when you step onto the starry ancient path, The Panwu Dao court will definitely kill you. Before she finished speaking, she hit the ground with her head. Bang! Wen Qingshue's head was bleeding, and her body fell into a pool of blood. Lin Sun and Ahu did not stop her. Even if Wen Qingxue, who had become a cripple, did not die at this moment, she was destined to not be able to leave the Kunlun ruins alive. Such an extremely dangerous place was not a place a cripple could survive. Ahu sighed. This is what they mean by you can't escape death. It's true that people will pity you if you're beautiful, but does that mean you can't die? There's no such logic in this world. Whoosh, Lin Sun waved his sleeve, and when Qingxue and the pool of blood on the ground were completely erased. On the battlefield, only the 16 diagrams of Emperor's saber, a mysterious sword tip, a white bone halberd, a Taiwu Dao sword, and the relics left behind by Void Spirit Kuan and Wen Qingxue. These naturally became Lin Sun's spoils of war. Some people's lips twitched when they saw this. Lin Sun was too ruthless. Hey, you guys are fast. At the entrance of the road of pilgrimage, a figure in a black robe with slender and straight legs appeared. He held a long, narrow, and shiny saber in his fair hand. It was Tang Su of the Frenzy Saber Battle Clan, known as Saber Addict. She glanced around and keenly noticed that the atmosphere was a little strange, and there were still traces of battle left in the field. Who could tell me what happened here? Tang Su was in high spirits. Many people looked at Lin Sun. Both Void Spirit Kuan and Wen Qingxue died just now. Hua Xingli said with a smile. Tang Su was stunned by Lin Sun's words. He also looked at Lin Sun and said in surprise, I didn't expect that you could even kill Void Spirit Kuan. Doesn't this mean that you can at least rank in the top 10 of the Starry Sky Great Sage list? Lin Sun smiled. I don't know about that. He had a good impression of Tang Su, who was pure and valiant. The young man in colorful robe suddenly said, Tang Su, don't you like to fight with masters? Fellow practitioner Lin Sun is not simple. Why don't you take this opportunity to have a try? A cold light flashed in Lin Sun's black eyes as he looked at him. The young man in colorful robe said with a smile, Don't get me wrong. It's just a fight, not a life-and-death vendetta. Why don't we have a fight? Lin Sun's figure flashed, and he stepped forward directly. Boom! He raised his fist and punched. It was simple, but it had the magic of returning to nature. The young man's face suddenly changed. He quickly dodged and said angrily, Lin Sun, you are so overbearing. What did I agree to fight with you? Like Tang Su, I also like to fight with masters. Of course, I should take this opportunity to have a try. Don't tell me that you are not a master. As he spoke, Lin Sun rushed forward and punched like lightning. His fist momentum covered the sky and the earth, making it impossible for the young man in colorful robe to dodge. Boom! The young man in colorful robe was so angry that he snorted and had to fight head-on. In just a moment, he was suppressed by Lin Sun's rolling fist momentum. He couldn't lift his head and was in a mess. Everyone couldn't help laughing. The young man in colorful robe was called Tuo Qinghai. He came from the Infernal Spirit Battle Clan, one of the top 10 battle clans. He was also an extremely powerful, peerless great saint. Being able to climb the pilgrimage platform was enough to prove that Tuo Qinghai was extraordinary. But he just wanted to provoke Lin Sun. Wasn't he looking for trouble? Crack! Not long after, Lin Sun slapped Tuo Qinghai in the face. The latter staggered back, his cheeks red and swollen, and blood dripped from the corner of his mouth. Tuo Qinghai was furious. He attacked with all his strength. Crack! But in just a few breaths, he was slapped in the face by Lin Sun again. His whole face was red and swollen like a pig's head. His hair was disheveled, and his face was beyond recognition. I'm going to kill you. Tuo Qinghai had already gone completely crazy. He was about to go crazy. Lin Sun said calmly, Don't get me wrong. It's not a matter of life and death. It's just a competition. You don't have to be so angry. What if you hurt yourself? Ahu burst into laughter. Tang Su praised. Lin Sun, I'm sure that you really killed Void Spirit Kuan. Otherwise, how could you bully Tuo Qinghai like this? Lin Sun, please show mercy. Suddenly, someone spoke up. He couldn't bear to see Tuo Chunghai's miserable situation, so he pleaded for him. All right. Lin Sun nodded and stopped immediately. It's a pity that I thought you were a great master. Who knew? Haha. Lin Sun's laughter was comparable to the most contemptuous ridicule in the world. Tuo Qinghai's face turned green and his teeth almost broke. But in the end, he was stopped by someone. It was just a farce. If he continued to fight, it would really become a battle of life and death. In that case, Tuo Qinghai was destined to follow in Void Spirit Koan's footsteps. At this point, no one dared to provoke Lin Sun anymore. Many people were even more afraid of Lin Sun, because Lin Sun was not only powerful, but also unscrupulous in his actions. He would fight at the slightest disagreement. This kind of person was the most dangerous. I just realized that even a great beauty, like when Qingxue was killed by you, I think I'd better not fight with you. What if you kill me if I can't beat you? Tang Su sighed. Lin Sun's strength made her eager to fight, but she had to weigh the consequences, so she felt a little regretful in her heart. Next to him, Ahu pursed his lips and chuckled. What did I say just now? With Wen Qingxue as an example, it's a pity that the fairies on the Starry Sky ancient path will treat you like a monster and avoid you like a snake or scorpion. Lin Sun smiled bitterly. Buzz, suddenly, strands of strange Taoist sounds rang out in the field. Everyone was shocked, and they all looked up at the vast universe in the sky at the same time. One of the stars suddenly shone brightly at this moment, emitting a ray of dazzling golden light that fell on the pilgrimage platform and bathed Zhuan Yuheng's dignified and slender figure. Chapter 1847. The Opportunity for Pilgrimage. Everyone present noticed at first glance that Zhuan Yuheng had comprehended a strand of the opportunity within the grand Tao of the universe, and he possessed the opportunity to attain pilgrimage. In the vast and deep universe, one of the stars emanated brilliant light, and then a strand of golden light descended and enveloped Zhuan Yuheng. He strode towards the five-colored Tao altar in the distance, and his figure was dazzling and extremely divine. In the end, he ascended the Tao altar and stood there while his aura started to undergo a miraculous and obscure transformation. Bang! In the end, the bright star actually melted into golden light that was dense like a waterfall, and it descended and was completely absorbed by Zhuan Yuheng. It was also at this moment that waves of the tune of the Tao resounded, and the phenomenon of all living beings faintly appeared in the sky above Zhuan Yuheng. On the other hand, Zhuan Yuheng was like a ruler that accepted the faith and worship of all living beings. Pilgrimage with the wishes of all living beings. The hearts of Lin Sun and the others shook. Some were envious, some exclaimed with admiration, some seemed to be slightly disappointed, and so on and so forth. After a short moment, all the phenomena vanished. On the other hand, an ancient black stone tablet surged into appearance on the five-colored altar, and it was suffused with strands of Tao light and coiled with chaotic energy. The pilgrimage tablet. Only a sage like Feng Chan could possess a Tao steel that belonged to him, and he could inscribe his will and name on it. The tablet would exist forever in the sky above the pilgrimage platform, and it would obtain the blessing of the heavens. For a time, everyone present couldn't help but feel slightly restless. It had always been said on the ancient pathway that any expert that could walk out of the Kunlun ruins alive would have the opportunity to attain the Tao and become an Emperor Realm expert in the future. Even though it was merely a single opportunity, it was sufficient to make countless half-step Emperor Realm and Quasi-Emperor Realm experts go mad. This opportunity referred to the karmic luck of the heavens that he obtained from the pilgrimage tablet on the pilgrimage platform. On the five-colored Tao altar, Zhuan Yuheng used the energy of his will to inscribe his name on the stone tablet. Accompanied by a ray of light that shot into the sky, the pilgrimage tablet soared into the sky and slowly charged into the sky. 3 kilometers, 6 kilometers, 9 kilometers. The pilgrimage tablet only stopped when it reached a height of 27 kilometers. It floated in midair and was enveloped by starlight. 27 kilometers. Amazing. Someone exclaimed. Lin Sun was in a daze. Then he heard Ahu's voice. The higher the position of the Tao steel of ascension is, the stronger the transformation that will occur after the Tao steel of ascension becomes a sage, and the more power of providence one will obtain from the heavens. This Zhuanyu Heng's Diana bestowal Tao steel is indeed not simple for it to float at a height of 7,000 zhang. Lin Sun finally understood. In his field of vision, the sky above the pilgrimage platform was densely packed with pilgrimage tablets. Some were bright and resplendent like stars, while some were dim like meteorites. Furthermore, the heights of those Ascension Tao steels were indeed different. Most of the Ascension Tao steels were distributed in the vicinity of 10,000 zhang. Most of them were dim like meteorites. Lin Sun's spiritual awareness allowed him to accurately judge that there were 798 tablets of Taoism there after a simple sweep. Currently, Zhuanyu Heng's Diana bestowal Tao steel was also located in this region. Furthermore, its location was very close to the front. There were only 49 Tao steels around the 27 kilometers mark, and most of them were below and above 27 kilometers. Only 3 Tao steels barely reached the area of 9,000 zhang. The Tao steels in this area were all bright and blazing, brighter than the stars. The atmosphere was magnificent and far from ordinary ones. These were all left by the powerhouses who had been consecrated on the pilgrimage platform since ancient times. Lin Sun couldn't help feeling strange. Zhuanyu Heng, a peerless great saint ranked in the top 10 on the Starry Sky Great Saint list, could only float at a height of 7,000 zhang. In contrast, what kind of terrifying powerhouses left those Tao steels that were far superior to Zhuanyu Heng's? What a pity! On the 5-color altar, Zhuanyu Heng let out a sigh. To others, it was already an extraordinary and supreme fortune to be able to preserve the Tao steel here for all eternity. But obviously, Zhuanyu Heng was not satisfied. He shook his head and turned to walk down the 5-color altar. At this moment, Lin Sun clearly felt the change of Zhuanyu Heng's aura. His every move carried a kind of power. He was like a leader of the holy path, full of majesty. This was the charm of a sage, which was different from that of a saint. As the saying goes, be like a virtuous person. Becoming a sage was equivalent to having the foundation to become a king of saints. Everyone narrowed their eyes slightly and showed a strange look. Zhuanyu Heng didn't pay attention to this. He found a place at random and sat cross-legged, as if he wanted to meditate and feel the changes in his body. This made many people secretly breathe a sigh of relief. In the past, there had been peerless figures who stopped others from seizing the good fortune after being consecrated as sages, and it happened more than once. Every time, there was endless bloodshed and a shocking number of casualties. Fortunately, Zhuanyu Heng didn't do that. In the following time, whether it was Hua Xingli, Tang Su, Lin Sun, or Ahu, they all got rid of distractions and began to meditate. The universe was vast, cold, and grand. There were billions of stars twinkling in it, and the essential power of the great ways of heaven was contained in it. As long as one could seize a trace of opportunity in the great ways, he could be consecrated as a sage like Zhuanyu Heng. Time passed little by little. A whim. The familiar fluctuation of the grand Tao resounded once more. A star in the universe glowed brilliantly before a strand of crimson-red light descended from it, and it bathed a thin man in light green armor within it. Nie Jianshen. How could it be him? Someone was surprised and seemed to have never expected that the thin man would be the second to comprehend a strand of opportunity. Just like Zhuanyu Heng, Nie Jinshan walked step by step up the 5-colored Tao platform, while the vital energy in his body underwent a transformation, and the image of all living had similarly floated up into appearance in the sky above him. This proved that he'd relied on the wish energy of all to be consecrated. After that, a Tao steel of ascension floated up into appearance. When Nie Jianshan left his name on it, Zhuanyu Heng, who sat cross-legged in the distance, opened his eyes. However, when he saw Nie Jianshan's Tao steel of ascension was merely floating 15 kilometers in the sky, Zhuanyu Heng closed his eyes once more. Even then, Nie Jianshan was extremely delighted and in high spirits. He walked down the 5-colored Dao platform with large strides, and then he glanced at the surroundings. In the end, just like Zhuan Yuhang, he chose a place to meditate. Everyone had different expressions on their faces, and their emotions were also different. Only Lin Sun didn't care about these at all. He was meditating and sensing. His spiritual awareness seemed to fly up into the sky and into the depths of the universe. An indescribable feeling of vastness and loneliness arose spontaneously. The universe was boundlessly vast, and it seemed to be boundless. When one stood within it, it caused one to feel extremely tiny and perplexed. They didn't know where the future was and where the return was. Gradually, Lin Sun's spiritual awareness flew deeper and farther. Along the way, all he saw were the vast stars and the cold and lonely Zhou Su buzz. Lin Sun didn't notice that on his body, the black copper piece left by the mother furnace of treasure quietly appeared a touch of obscure ripple. At the same time, Lin Sun's spiritual awareness captured a boiling, dazzling, and tumbling Zhou Su like molten lava, which turned into a huge flame vortex. In front of this flame vortex, the 10,000-meter-tall giant was no different from a small ant. It was so huge that it was like a huge black hole in the universe, but it was flowing with terrible flames. The stars near the flame vortex seemed to be burning. They were extremely red and flew out rolling divine flames. For a moment, Lin Sun's spiritual awareness was stinging. But at the same time, there was also an obscure and mysterious feeling in his heart. Source of treasure refining. It was a land of the origin of the great path that covered nearly 10,000 kinds of treasure refining divine flames. The mother furnace of treasure refining, which had refined 9 emperors' weapons, was born in the flame vortex called source of treasure refining. Lin Sun's heart was stirred. He didn't expect that he could see such a shocking secret when he sensed the opportunity of pilgrimage. Until his mood calmed down, Lin Sun's spiritual awareness continued to sweep into the depths of the universe. Along the way, he sensed many times, but he got nothing in the end. However, his state of mind was extremely calm and clear, because he didn't have any idea of obtaining it. Whether it was by relying on the power of all living beings' will or the power of the Great Way, it was not a problem for him for a long time. After an unknown period of time, Lin Sun's spiritual awareness had flown a great distance. In the depths of the vast universe, he sensed constantly, and his soul couldn't help but feel tired and powerless. The great sage is great and boundless, but in front of this vast universe, it seems too small. Lin Sun's heart surged with an indescribable loneliness. In the vast sea of stars and boundless universe, it was like a person walking alone. The surroundings were cold and silent, and it made him feel unspeakably depressed, helpless, and frustrated. Gradually, his consciousness seemed as if it was on the verge of melting, and he was lost within the boundless universe. No! Suddenly, Lin Sun's state of mind was instinctively vigilant. His spiritual awareness that was spreading in the depths of the universe suddenly stopped. Even if he went deeper in the vast universe, when would he reach the end? But if he didn't go deeper, how could he sense the opportunity contained in this universe? Originally, Lin Sun was just curious and had no desire for it. But when he really began to sense, his spiritual awareness had already sensed the depths of this universe. He was unwilling to give up like this. Then try again. Lin Sun abandoned distracting thoughts and continued to sense the depths of the universe with his spiritual awareness. The familiar feeling of loneliness, depression, helplessness, and frustration arose spontaneously again. But Lin Sun didn't care about it anymore. His spiritual awareness was like the moon in the blue sea and the moon in the well. It was no longer affected by the sky and clouds. Gradually, his consciousness showed a kind of blankness. It was not slack and lost, but a kind of feeling of forgetfulness after the mind was free from distractions. Not knowing how long it had been, a wisp of sound like morning bell and evening drum resounded in his heart, faintly discernible and ethereal. In Lin Sun's spiritual awareness, it was like an electric shock or a sudden warning, producing a wonderful feeling. Chapter 1848. Starting from Zhuan Yuheng until now, Nia Jianshun, Tang Su, and the others had successively comprehended a strand of critical factor that came from the depths of the universe, and they'd smoothly ascended the five-colored sacrificial altar to advance into the sage realm. The five of them also left their own pilgrimage steels in the air above the pilgrimage platform. However, except for Zhuan Yuheng's pilgrimage tablet, which was 70,000 feet high, the other fours were below 70,000 feet. No one could reach 90,000 feet. No one could challenge Zhuan Yuheng's height. Even so, the four powerhouses who took advantage of the situation to become sages were filled with joy, because sages not only meant a transformation in the great sage realm, but also meant that they could climb to the top of the Sage King realm in the future. Experts who had yet to comprehend the pilgrimage opportunity had a different mindset. When Lin Sun first arrived at the pilgrimage platform, there were 9 people, including Shu Lingkuan and Wen Qingxue. Later, Ahu and Tang Su arrived one after another. Without Shu Lingkuan and Wen Qingxue, there were still 9 people. Now, 5 people had become sages. Only Lin Sun, Ahu, Hua Xingli, and a woman named Qi Xinyu had not sensed the opportunity to become sages. Haha! Although some people's battle prowess is powerful, they are savage and lawless by nature. No wonder they are still unable to be conferred the title of sage. Tuo Chenghai, the young man in colorful clothes, was the 5th to be consecrated as a sage. When he walked down from the 5-color altar, he glanced coldly at Lin Sun and Ahu with a faint hatred. Earlier, Lin Sun had chased after him and slapped him so hard that his head was swollen like a pig's head. This was a great humiliation to him. Now that Tuo Chenghai had become a sage before Lin Sun and Ahu, there was a faint murderous intent in his heart. Lin Sun was completely unaware of this and did not respond. Ahu, on the other hand, frowned and was startled awake from a deep level of sensing. She could not suppress the anger in her heart. No one could be happy to be disturbed at this moment. Tuo Chenghai. Before Ahu could say anything, Tang Su, who was sitting cross-legged on the side, suddenly opened his eyes and said, "You and I are both sages now. Do you want to have a spar?" There was eagerness in his voice. Tuo Chenghai's expression slightly changed. He forced a smile and said, "Forget it. I just stepped into this realm, so I need to calm my mind and comprehend it." Tang Su responded with an "oh" and said, "That's fine too. If you want to fight, I'll be the first to accompany you." With that, she closed her eyes again. Tuo Chenghai, on the other hand, had a bitter taste in his mouth and was cursing in his heart. How could he not see that Tang Su had clearly sensed what he wanted to do? Under such circumstances, as long as he dared to attack Lin, Tang Su would definitely stop him in the name of learning from each other. Ahu also guessed this, and couldn't help but have a good impression of Tang Su. Tuo Chenghai glanced at Lin and Hu, then turned to an open space and sat cross-legged, meditating on the benefits brought to him by the previous transformation. Ahu ignored it directly and looked at Lin beside him. Seeing that Lin was not disturbed, he felt relieved and began to sense again. As time went by, no one on the pilgrimage path could reach the top of the mountain from beginning to end. It could be inferred how difficult it was to approach the pilgrimage platform. Su Lingkuan and Wen Qingxue were lucky to have the ability to climb the pilgrimage platform, but they were also unlucky to have died here before they could sense the opportunity of the pilgrimage platform. When people died, the lamp went out and the Tao became empty. They were not as good as those who had not climbed the pilgrimage platform. At least they were alive, and there was hope for them to go further on the road of Tao in the future. A quarter of an hour later, the woman named Qi Xinyu also sensed the opportunity of the pilgrimage platform. She turned into a sage and left her own pilgrimage tablet. 2 hours later, Ahu also sensed the opportunity of the pilgrimage platform and climbed the 5-color Taoist platform. At this moment, Tuo Chenghai quietly opened his eyes. As soon as Hu left, there was no one around Lin. If he took this opportunity to kill Lin. Thinking of this, Tuo Chunghai's body suddenly froze. He noticed that Tang Su was looking at him with a hint of playfulness. Tuo Chunghai was furious. He was more and more sure that Tang Su was targeting him and was determined to protect Lin. In the end, he sighed to himself and gave up the plan of attacking Lin. It was also at this moment that a strange change suddenly occurred. A gray figure, like smoke, appeared quietly and came behind Lin at an incredible speed. Swish! In his palm, a sharp awl stabbed at Lin. At the same time, a black and strange lotus appeared over Lin's head. The stamen of the flower flowed with divine light and covered Lin. All of this happened in an instant, incredibly fast. Even Tang Su, Zhuan Yuheng, and Ye Jianshun, when they noticed this scene, the attack had completely broken out. Everyone was awestruck. Tuo Chunghai was so excited that he almost cried out. For him, this sneak attack was like a gift from heaven. At this time, Ahu had already climbed the five-color Taoist platform and was being baptized and transformed by the power of the pilgrimage platform. He did not notice this scene at all. It was no exaggeration to say that the timing of this attack was precise and the attack was swift and fierce. It was almost the pinnacle of assassination. Anyone who saw this would be shocked and horrified. Lin was going to suffer. At this critical moment, the same thought came to everyone's mind at the same time. But the next moment, a big abyss suddenly appeared on Lin, who was like a clay sculpture and did not notice anything. Boom! Qi roared, covering the sky and the earth. The unparalleled and terrible sword Qi roared out from Lin Sun's body like a vast ocean. Taishian's sword Qi. 72 earthly evil sword mountains. In an instant, the black lotus covering Lin's head was the first to be smashed, turning into black ashes and disappearing. Soon after, a sharp awl that attacked from behind was blocked by many sword mountains. In the end, it was shaken and forced to retreat. Damn it! Sha Luqing, the oracle messenger of the divine image sect, and Ku Du, the traveler of misfortune from the hidden land realm, appeared in the field. Both of them looked shocked and incredulous. Tang Su, Zhuan Yuheng, and the others were surprised, and they felt very surprised. At such a critical moment, Lin Sun was actually able to react in time, and this was too shocking. The smile on Tuo Chunghai's face froze, and his joy was replaced by an inexplicable anger. How could Lin Sun not be killed in this way? Lin Sun's dark eyes were deep. He turned to look at Sha Luqing and Ku Du with an indifferent expression and said, "You've used the same trick twice. Are you at your wit's end? But you two came at the right time. It's time to end this." Being attacked abruptly and interrupted abruptly, Lin Sun, who was in a state of mind to sense the opportunity of the pilgrimage, seemed unperturbed. There was a kind of chilling calmness in him. Sha Luqing and Ku Du, who were stared at by Lin Sun, felt uncomfortable all over. This time, their assassination attempt against Lin Sun failed again, exposing their whereabouts. So they could only face Lin Sun head-on again. Even they felt unspeakably depressed. Was Lin Sun their nemesis? Swish! Lin Sun made his move. He stretched out his right index finger and drew a line in the void. A sword Qi suddenly condensed, filling the universe and cutting through the longitude and latitude. It seemed to contain all the mysteries in it, showing a simple feeling of returning to simplicity. Its edge was unparalleled and unrestrained. Its power was unparalleled, and even ghosts and gods had to flee. This sword was called Gone Without Return. Oh no! Sha Luqing's hair stood on end, and his soul almost flew out of his body. His mind, state of mind, and consciousness were completely shocked by the power of this sword Qi, producing an uncontrollable terror. Without the slightest hesitation, he gave it his all and displayed his trump card to save his life. Clatter! His body transformed into strands of gray flowing light, and his speed was so fast that it could shock the world as he flashed towards the pilgrimage path. The life-saving means of an assassin and a killer were never to kill the enemy, but to escape. Unfortunately, he had no idea how terrible this sword Wu Yang inherited from Battle Emperor Wu Yang was. As the sword rose, the heavens and the earth changed color. As the sword fell, the wisps of flowing light that Sha Liuqing's body had turned into were extinguished in the wind, disappearing without a trace. One sword killing Sha Liuqing. What was creepy was that there was no blood or corpse. It was as if Sha Liuqing had been completely erased. There was dead silence, and not a single sound could be heard. Even when Lin Sun was fighting with Su Ling Kuan and when Qing Xue, they had never seen Lin Sun use such unbelievably terrifying sword chi. The style of that sword could shock the world. Bald donkey, it's your turn. Lin Sun looked at Ku Du in the distance. Ku Du was dressed in black monk robes, and a black lotus was branded on his head. Although he had witnessed the whole process of Sha Liuqing's death, his expression was indifferent. The descendants of the Hidden Land realm were unafraid of death, and they were heartless. But this did not mean that Ku Du was not afraid. At this moment, he felt a chill in his heart. Lin Sun, you have been targeted by the divine Sunshine Ancient Sect and the Hidden Land realm. Unless you don't set foot on the starry ancient path in this life, you will die in the darkness in the future, no matter how outstanding your performance is now. Ku Du said indifferently. Under his feet, there were 18 black lotus pictures, each of which had a shadow of a dark Buddha. Swish! Before his voice died away, Ku Du's figure disappeared out of thin air. Buzz! But at the same time, Lin Sun suddenly took out the insignificance bow, pulled the bowstring to the fullest, and shot the blue sky arrow. Go to heaven! Go to hell! On the pilgrimage road, filled with chaotic chi, there was a muffled sound. Blood rushed up. If you looked closely, you could see that Ku Du was pierced by an arrow, his body exploded, and his flesh and blood flew on the ancient bluestone steps. Still want to escape? Do you really think you can escape? Lin Sun put away the insignificance bow and the blue sky arrow, and a pair of mysterious Buddhist symbols flashed in his black eyes. Others might not be able to see Ku Du's escaping figure, but it was not difficult for Lin Sun, who cultivated the Dharma scripture. It should be known that this sutra was a supreme sutra created by holy monk Du Ji with the Earth Sutra as the foundation. Chapter 1849. Why did the Hidden Land realm regard Lin Sun as a heretic that must be killed? On the one hand, it was because of the Bodhi wood with taboo power sealed in it. But more importantly, Lin had mastered the Dharma scripture. Just like before, when Lin Sun saw through Ku Du's escape method, he used one of the magical skills in Dharma scripture. The surroundings were deathly silent. Zhuan Yu Heng, Tang Su, Nie Jianshun, and the others felt apprehensive in their hearts. They had also seen through Sha Liuqing and Ku Du's identities, but they hadn't expected that Lin Sun would be targeted by them. This was the successor of the second of the three giants in the dark world. Once he was targeted, there would be no end of trouble. When he realized this, Tuo Chenghai, who was originally so depressed that he was about to vomit blood, couldn't help but feel a burst of joy and schadenfreude. He knew very well that ever since he entered the Kunlun ruins, there were countless successors and descendants of the 6 great Dao courts and 10 great battle clans that had died in Lin Sun's hands. Yin Chunjun, Luong, Gu Zongxin, Tao Jianxing, Kuan Julin, Void Spirit Kuan, Wenqing Shui. These were all famous figures. In addition to these, at least hundreds of overmatches had died in Lin Sun's hands. If this matter were to spread out, which force on the starry sky ancient path would be able to tolerate this young man? Now, even the dark world had their eyes on Lin Sun, which was undoubtedly one disaster after another. As Ku Du had said before, unless Lin Sun never set foot on the starry sky ancient path in this life, he was bound to be attacked by many powerful forces. Why are you smiling so happily? Doesn't your face hurt? Lin Sun suddenly opened his mouth and looked over. Tuo Chenghai's face froze. He flew into a rage and stood up abruptly. Lin Sun, do you really think I dare not fight you? Do you want to spar? However, Tang Su's face was filled with anticipation. Black lines appeared on Tuo Chenghai's forehead. He was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Meanwhile, Zhuan Yu Heng suddenly spoke. Following his gaze, he saw that high up in the sky, there was a Tao stele of ascension floating at a height of 20 kilometers. It was on par with Zhuan Yu Heng's Tao stele of ascension, and it was even slightly taller. A wave of restlessness arose in the surroundings, and their gazes simultaneously shot towards a peerlessly beautiful figure on the 5-colored Tao platform. Because this was a Hu's Tao stele of ascension. He was also the only existence that had surpassed Zhuan Yu's Hung Feng Chan. If you don't dare to fight Miss Tang Su, why don't we have a spar? Ahu's sleeves fluttered in the wind as he walked down from the 5-colored Tao altar with a smile. She was graceful and charming, and her watery eyes were firmly locked on Tuo Chenghai. Humph! Unlike Lin Sun, I never bully women. Tuo Chenghai snorted coldly and sat back down with a gloomy face. How is it? Ahu looked at Lin Sun worriedly. Although Sha Luqing and Lin Sun were both killed, their appearance destroyed Lin's state of mind to sense the opportunity of the pilgrimage ceremony. I'm fine. With his hands behind his back, Lin Sun looked up at the universe in the sky above him. But unlike before, this universe had become different in his eyes. No one knew that Lin Sun had peeped into the place where the source furnace of treasure refining was born in his previous deep sensing. Moreover, he even obtained an unimaginable enlightenment. By the way, why did you choose the pilgrimage ceremony with the power of all living beings? Lin Sun was puzzled and asked Ahu. Obtaining the power of all living beings and becoming a sage could indeed transform one's own strength. With the power of sage, one could set foot on the top of the Sage King realm in the future. But in comparison, it was not as good as the pilgrimage ceremony with the power of all living beings. Pilgrimage ceremony with the power of all living beings also needed to seek welfare for all living beings, such as educating all living beings with one's divine path and preaching to the world. It seemed simple, but it was actually not easy. Moreover, if one didn't do so, he would be hindered by the power of all living beings, which would have a great impact on his future cultivation. But the pilgrimage ceremony with the power of all living beings would not be affected. Ahu said with a smile, "This is also good. The great path I seek is not enough for me to become a sage. When there is a chance in the future, I also want to establish a sect, teach all living beings, and impart the Tao and the essence to them." Lin Sun said nothing more. This was the pursuit of the great path. Everyone's pursuit was different. Buzz. Soon, Hua Xingli also perceived a wisp of opportunity for pilgrimage ceremony and ascended the 5-color Taoist altar. He was different from Zhuan Yuheng, Nie Jianshun, and Tang Su in front of him. The power of pilgrimage ceremony he triggered was actually a magnificent light of Tao. Above his head, there was a terrible vision of the 3,000 demons' territory and the catastrophe of all living beings. Pilgrimage ceremony with the power of all living beings. Lin Sun's pupils shrank. Almost at the same time, there was a burst of exclamation in the field. Everyone, including Zhuan Yuheng and Tang Su, couldn't help showing a look of surprise. Because so far, Hua Xingli was the only one in the field who used the power of Great Path to become a sage, which seemed to be different. I didn't expect that Hua Xingli had opened up a brand new demonic method and got the recognition of the power of pilgrimage ceremony. Zhuan Yuheng's eyes on Hua Xingli had changed. Others couldn't calm down either, especially when they saw that the pilgrimage ceremony tablet belonging to Hua Xingli rushed up to the sky at an amazing speed, breaking all the previous results and reaching the distance of more than 80,000 feet. There was a burst of exclamation in the field. This result was more than amazing. It surpassed the achievements of some ancestors who had shown here in the past years. There will be one more great figure in the demon court in the future. Ahu couldn't help but be surprised. Hua Xingli, a peerless figure whose ranking on the Great Sage list was far lower than that of Void Spirit Kuan and Zhuan Yuheng, could make such a dazzling achievement in the pilgrimage ceremony. This was something that no one had expected before. Brother Lin, you're the only one left. Hua Xingli walked down from the 5-color Taoist altar. His hair was as white as snow, and his cheeks were still sickly pale. But there was a great majesty all over him, as if he was standing above the sky. Many people also looked at Lin Sun. Indeed, Lin Sun was the only one left on the pilgrimage ceremony platform who hadn't sensed the opportunity of pilgrimage ceremony. They couldn't help but look strange. Lin Sun was so domineering and powerful before, but he still couldn't be in the holy way for a long time. Was it really because of the interference of Sha Luqing and Lin Sun that he completely missed this supreme opportunity? At this moment, Lin Sun smiled and walked towards the five-color Taoist altar in the distance. His pace was leisurely, as if he were taking a stroll in a courtyard, unspeakably free and casual. However, everyone was stunned. What was he going to do? It should be known that no one could get close to the five-color Taoist altar before comprehending the opportunity of pilgrimage ceremony. Before this, many people had already tried to probe him. But now, Lin Sun didn't seize the opportunity of pilgrimage ceremony, but walked towards the five-color Taoist altar, which naturally made people feel very strange. Lin Sun, are you not reconciled? But you should know that in the past years, there were many people who arrived at the pilgrimage ceremony platform like you, but didn't seize the opportunity of pilgrimage ceremony. Tuo Chunghai couldn't help but say. It seemed to be a reminder, but there was a kind of sarcasm in his words, as if he was watching a joke. Ahu frowned her delicate and charming eyebrows and didn't say anything, because she also didn't understand what Lin Sun was going to do. Zhuan Yu Heng, Tang Su, Nie Jianshun, Qi Xinyu, and others all paid attention to Lin Sun's abnormal behavior with doubts and puzzlement. Lin Sun didn't pay attention to all of this. On the other hand, the sound of the Tao resounded like a bell in his heart, and it was deafening. Stepping on the starry Han shoes, strolling up the Kunlun Mountains. It was a line of Taoist hymn, but it seemed to have a magical power, making Lin Sun's mind emerge scenes of the grand universe. There was a huge whirlpool of fire like a black hole in the starry sky, turning into the source of treasure refining, flowing out thousands of kinds of Taoist fire, burning the stars. There was a boundless sea of stars, a cold and lonely universe, walking alone, lonely for eternity. There was all kinds of scenes and experiences were what Lin Sun had sensed before. At this time, these scenes were like running water, flowing through Lin Sun's mind calmly. No matter how boundless the universe, billions of stars, hiding all the mysteries of the Great Way, I am free and unfettered, walking on the wind. In a trance, Lin Sun seemed to see that there was a man walking up here in ancient times, free and unfettered above the universe. At this time, Lin Sun stepped onto the five-color Taoist altar. It was easy and casual, as if he was walking on the flat ground. Everyone's pupils shrank. He actually climbed up? This was simply unimaginable. Before, they had all tried, but before they could get close, they were stopped by the forbidden power emitted by the five-color Taoist altar. But now, Lin Sun became an exception. Climbing the five-color Taoist altar, Lin Sun's face was calm. Only a pair of black eyes showed a touch of enlightenment, and his heart was open. He looked up at the sky, waved his sleeves, and stretched out his right hand, palm facing the sky. Lift your sleeves to catch the sun and the moon, and all the heavens enter the palm lines. A line of Taoist hymn seemed to resound in the depths of his mind. In Lin Sun's vision, the vast and silent universe was reflected in his pupils, as if it had shrunk countless times. This God. There was a burst of exclamation in the field. No one could calm down, and they all looked at the universe in shock. There were countless stars twinkling there, some bright and resplendent, some dim and dull. Previously, they had sensed it one by one and seized the opportunity of the pilgrimage ceremony. The stars turned into streams of power of pilgrimage ceremony, fell down, and integrated into their bodies, transforming them into sages. Yet now, within their fields of vision, the countless stars in the universe emanated numerous dazzling rays of light, and they were dense like a Milky Way that poured down from the sky. The heavens seemed to tremble, and the void around them shone brightly, illuminating the starry sky. It was incomparably brilliant, as if a miracle was being born. The incredible scene shocked everyone present. Even at the foot of the Kunlun Hill, many cultivators who had no chance to reach the pilgrimage ceremony platform were alarmed at this moment, and they all looked into the depths of the sky. Originally, that place was covered by the gray, chaotic chi, and nothing could be seen. But at this moment, a brilliant and dazzling light lit up in the chaotic chi, illuminating the gray sky. It was sacred and dazzling. There was an uproar, and everyone was stunned. What happened on the pilgrimage ceremony platform? Chapter 1850. The universe roared. Thousands of stars trembled, and a vast light bloomed. On the pilgrimage platform, Zhuan Yuheng and Tang Su couldn't sit still anymore. They all stood up and looked at the scene in shock. Such a thing had never happened in the past years. Boom! Countless rays of light fell like a river of stars, all rushing towards Lin Sun. An incredible scene appeared. Lin Sun raised his right hand and absorbed all the light like a bottomless abyss. His whole body was bathed in the brilliant light, and he swallowed the sky with one hand. There was a sound of gasping in the field. What was going on? Was Lin Sun doing a pilgrimage? It was just that the commotion was a little too shocking. Lift your sleeve to catch the sun and the moon, and all the heavens enter your palm. The loud voice was still ringing in Lin Sun's mind. His palm was boiling hot. As the rolling light poured in, the fine palm lines seemed to be branded with a layer of mysterious Taoist diagram, but it was extremely vague. I see. Lin Sun was suddenly enlightened. The Taoism left by the Lord of Fongsun Mountain was called Teaching Taoism, but Lin Sun had never really been taught anything. He had learned the battle saint technique left behind by the arrogant senior brother, the eternal leakless technique taught by senior brother Xian Kong, and the great Tao Golden Court scripture left behind by senior brother Gyupu, but he had never been taught by the Lord of Fongsun Mountain. And this mysterious Taoism had always been hidden in the Tower of Endless Tao. Now, Lin Sun realized that the Taoist karma taught by the Lord of Fongsun Mountain was actually hidden on the pilgrimage platform. He walked up the Kunlun Mountain with his starry shoes. This Taoist hymn referred to the top of the Kunlun Hill. Lift your sleeve to catch the sun and the moon, and all the heavens enter your palm. This Taoist hymn referred to the Taoist karma hidden in the universe above his head. However, Lin Sun didn't associate the four sentences of this Taoist hymn with the Kunlun Hill before. It was only after he arrived here that he saw the truth by chance. In a trance, Lin Sun seemed to see the Lord of Fongsun Mountain walking up the Kunlun Mountain and ascending to the universe. With a wave of his sleeve, he could grasp the sun and moon. With just a stretch of his hand, he could infuse all the mysteries of the heavens into his palm. This Kunlun void is definitely closely related to Fongsun Mountain's orthodoxy. Lin Sun was more and more sure of this. The Peach Blossom mystic realm had traces left behind by that arrogant senior brother. At the peak of Mount Imperial Dragon, there were traces left behind by Li Xianwei. Senior brother Gyupu had been guarding the God-sealing sky peak for countless years. And now, the peak of the Kunlun Hill contained the Tao Karma left behind by the master of Fongsun Mountain. A series of clues and truths were all related to Mount Fongsun. They all existed in the Kunlun ruins, one of the four ancient gods' ruins. This also meant that Mount Fongsun's orthodoxy was inseparable from the Kunlun ruins. He couldn't have obtained a secret to becoming an emperor or an ancestor, right? Suddenly, someone cried out involuntarily. Just these words alone caused the hearts of Zhuan Yuheng, Tang Su, and the others to shake fiercely, and their expressions turned grim. Since ancient times, there had always been a rumor on the starry sky ancient path. On the ascension platform, one of the three forbidden areas of the Kunlun ruins, there was a supreme fortune related to becoming an emperor or an ancestor. However, for countless years, none of the experts who had reached the ascension platform had been able to touch such a great fortune. Even so, many great forces on the starry sky ancient path firmly believed that this great fortune definitely existed. Now, watching Lin Sun ascend the five-colored Tao altar and trigger an unprecedented change, Who wouldn't suspect that he had touched the secret of becoming an emperor or an ancestor? Becoming an emperor or an ancestor. This was a completely different concept from the opportunity to prove one's Tao and become an emperor. Even if an emperor realm figure knew about it, he would fight to the death to obtain it. If it spread to the starry sky ancient path, there was no doubt that those terrifying figures and old antiques who had hidden from the world would definitely make a move. For a moment, many people's mouths were dry, and their hearts were in turmoil. Did Lin Sun really obtain such a supreme fortune? It's ridiculous. Lin Sun is only a great saint. There's still a long way to go before he becomes an emperor. With his current foundation and strength, how could he have a chance to touch such a fortune? Ahu snorted coldly. She realized that the atmosphere was not right. Zhuan Yu Heng, Nie Jianshun, and others looked at Lin Sun in a different way. This is fate. Who can be sure that what Lin Sun got at this time is not a chance to become an emperor or an ancestor? Tua Chenghai said, his eyes twinkling. The others were silent, but it was obvious that they also thought so. Ahu's heart sank. If this news spread, from now on, Lin Sun was bound to become a delicious cake in everyone's eyes. Even if he could finally kill his way out of the Kunlun ruins, who would let go of a young man who possessed the secret of becoming an emperor or an ancestor on the starry sky ancient path. At that time, even an emperor realm figure might attack Lin Sun regardless of face. Boom! Rumbling suddenly resounded in the universe, and then numerous stars were dispersed and obliterated. In the time of a few breaths, the vast starry sky had actually transformed into an expanse of empty space. The stars fell forever and no longer existed at this moment. In the vein of Lin Sun's right palm, a mysterious Taoist diagram appeared, with 3 stars arranged and a crescent hanging high. Crescent and 3 stars. It was the word heart. Square inch also referred to heart. In front of the gate of Mount Fongsuan, there used to be a stone tablet with the words crescent and 3 stars. At this moment, Lin Sun thought of too many things in the past. He thought of the scenes he saw when he entered the ultimate for the first time and obtained the saint method of fight. The collapsed gate, the broken stone tablet, the vague handwriting of crescent and 3 stars, and the unruly figure kneeling in front of the ruined gate. He thought of senior brother Xuankong's proud introduction of Mount Fongsuan and his brothers. He thought a major setback that Lord of Tongtian, Luo Tongtian, had encountered in the ultimate. He thought of Demon Emperor Dutian, who was now sealed in the Tower of Endless Tao, and the old Putti, who had been crazily slandered. All his thoughts finally converged on the Taoist diagram of crescent and 3 stars in his palm. Lin Sun thought inexplicably, does this mean that I have officially been taught by my master? In fact, he already had the answer. Yes, this was teaching, because in the diagram in his right palm, there was a Taoist karma of emperor and ancestor. And it was this cognition that made Lin Sun realize that the secret of emperor and ancestor circulating on the ancient road of the starry sky did exist. The reason why no one could obtain it was that all the strong people who reached the pilgrimage platform were not the descendants of Mount Fongsuan. In other words, this Taoist karma was originally left by the Lord of Mount Fongsuan for his successor. I come from the mortal world and knock on the door of longevity. The wonderful method reveals one's nature, and the Tao is given to the predestined one. The voice, like a great bell, resounded in Lin Sun's heart again. Then, the Taoist diagram of crescent and 3 stars in Lin Sun's right palm emitted a strange and obscure light, and then quietly melted into his flesh and disappeared. But Lin Sun knew that this Taoist karma was in his palm. The wonderful method reveals one's nature, and the Tao is given to the predestined one. Lin Sun murmured in his heart, thinking of the past. Finally, he took a deep breath. For the first time since he started his cultivation, he had a complete sense of belonging to Mount Fongsuan. Disciple Lin Sun, thanks, Master, he said solemnly in his heart. At this time, the pilgrimage platform had completely restored its previous calmness. But the way people looked at Lin Sun was completely different. Lin Sun, Did you get the secret of Emperor and Ancestor question mark? Tuo Qinghai couldn't help but shout. The others also looked at Lin Sun. It's none of your business. Lin Sun sneered. At a glance, he could see that not only Tuo Qinghai, but also Zhuan Yu Heng's mentality had changed subtly. Tuo Qinghai's cheeks turned red. But Lin Sun ignored him and looked up at the sky. His clothes were fluttering, and he was surrounded by ethereal aura. Boom! The universe above him was an expanse of nothingness. There weren't any stars or light, and it was a cold, desolate, and empty scene. But at this time, there was an inexplicable power of order steaming and roaring. And on the five-color Taoist altar, an ancient black steel emerged. Everyone was stunned. This guy was too lucky. Just now, he not only got the great fortune of Emperor and Ancestor, but also got the pilgrimage ceremony. Lin Sun didn't rush to carve his name. Instead, he thought for a while and finally made a decision. Buzz. The power of his will gathered at his fingertips, and he began to sketch on the steel. Lin Daoyuan. Daoyuan was not Lin Sun's name, but the Taoist name he gave himself after he became a sage. There were 50 great ways and 49 heavenly evolutions. Lin Sun was the one among the successors of Mount Mind and Heart. And Lin Sun's Tao began with his spiritual vein being robbed, and now he used the devouring abyss as the foundation. Therefore, Lin Sun gave himself the name Daoyuan, taking his body as the Tao and the devouring abyss as the One. The pilgrimage ceremony tablet glowed and rushed to the sky with a buzzing sound. 3 kilometers, 6 kilometers, 8 kilometers. As they watched Lin Sun's pilgrimage ceremony tablet soar into the sky, Zhuan Yu Heng and the others couldn't help but tremble. When they saw the Tao tablet of ascension easily charge up to the height of 24 kilometers, and then it surged all the way up to 27 kilometers in the sky, everyone in the surroundings almost didn't dare believe their eyes. Wasn't this too fierce? At the beginning, Zhuan Yu Heng's achievement in the pilgrimage ceremony was the most dazzling, and no one could match it. But in the end, he was surpassed by Hua Xingli. But now, Lin Sun, who they thought had almost no hope of becoming a sage, had miraculously become a sage, and even the pilgrimage ceremony tablet had soared to the sky. Who wouldn't be shocked? There were only 3 pilgrimage ceremony tablets in the sky, and every single one of them was like the sun in the sky, shining brightly like a ruler. But today, there was one more pilgrimage ceremony tablet that belonged to Lin Sun. He really amazes the world with a single brilliant feat. Tang Su couldn't help but sigh. But before she could finish speaking, she was stunned once more, and her starry eyes opened wide. Chapter 1851. Not only Tang Su, but everyone present was dumbfounded at this moment, and their pupils dilated. Lin Sun's steel didn't stop after reaching the height of 90,000 meters. Instead, it suddenly grew a lot higher. Under the horrified gazes of the crowd, the steel didn't stop until it reached a height of 30,000 feet. It was so silent that even a pin drop could be heard. Everyone felt their throats were dry, and their emotions were agitated, and it was difficult for them to calm down. Since ancient times, reaching 90,000 feet in the sky was already an achievement that people could only look up to. Just think about it. In the endless years of time, there were only 3 people who managed to reach 90,000 feet in the sky. Among these 3 people, one was Xin Shangqian from the primeval times, who had stepped into the Emperor realm a long time ago, and his title was Profundity Emperor. The other was Feng Tianzi from the Black-Yellow Taoist court 100,000 years ago, who had also stepped into the Emperor realm, and his title was Enlightenment Emperor. Now he lived in seclusion in the Black-Yellow Taoist court. The last one was a mysterious man named Qi Ning from 60,000 years ago. No one knew his origin, and no one knew where he would go after that. He was the most mysterious of the 3. But today, Lin Sun created an unprecedented achievement in one fell swoop with his own power of pilgrimage. The pilgrimage steel shone high up in the sky. This was like a miracle, and it brought endless shock to everyone. It was common knowledge that the higher the position of the Tao steel of ascension was, the stronger the transformation that would occur after the Tao steel of ascension became a saint, and the more karmic luck one would obtain from this. And Lin Sun's achievement of pilgrimage was the first person in the history of the world. How amazing was the transformation after he became a sage? How much karmic luck would he be able to obtain? Just thinking about it made people's hearts tremble. I didn't expect Brother Lin to catch up and become the biggest winner on this pilgrimage platform. After a long time, Hua Xingli sighed. The expressions of the others were also uncertain. Before, Lin Sun seemed to have obtained the supreme secret of becoming an emperor and ancestor, and now he was conferred as a sage, surpassing all others. He was indeed the biggest winner. Even Ahu didn't expect that such a miracle would happen to Lin Sun. He was shocked for a while. On the five-color Taoist altar, Lin Sun stood alone, tall and straight, exuding a kind of ethereal spirit of full perfection. Looking from afar, under his seemingly calm aura, there was a great majesty that went straight to the heart. That was the aura of the sage, and it was extraordinary. I don't care if he's a winner or not. All I know is that this kid has seized a great fortune to become an emperor or an ancestor. Tuo Chenghai's expression kept changing. He couldn't suppress the jealousy and hatred in his heart. Zhuan Yuheng, Nie Jianshun, and the others all wore different expressions. Whoosh! Suddenly, Lin Sun made his move. The broken sword cut through the air at an incredible speed, like a dream, lightning, and illusion. Tuo Chenghai's face changed dramatically. How could he have expected that Lin Sun would attack him without saying a word? When he wanted to dodge, it was already too late, so he could only face it head-on. Bang! In the next moment, Tuo Chenghai was sent flying, blood spurting from his nose and mouth. Almost at the same time, whose figure flashed and appeared in front of Tuo Chenghai. A transparent flying sword appeared in his palm, and he stabbed at Tuo Chenghai. From Lin Sun's attack to Hu's attack, their cooperation was seamless and impeccable. Tuo Chenghai, who had suffered a heavy blow, had no time to react, and his neck was pierced by the flying sword. With a puff, his head was chopped off and blood splashed. Tuo Chenghai's eyes widened, and his face was full of anger and unwillingness. He died suddenly at this moment. His body fell to the ground, and his head rolled down. Until his death, he had never thought that he would die at this time, when he had finally reached the top of the pilgrimage platform and seized the opportunity to be conferred as a sage. He was so unwilling. This bloody and sudden scene also made Zhuan Yuheng and the others' hearts skip a beat, and their faces changed. A fly that doesn't know what's good for it is buzzing nonstop. Isn't it courting death? Who said indifferently? The others were silent. After calming down, they realized that if they had a conflict with Lin Sun at this moment, it was really hard to say who would win. But Lin Sun didn't care about all this at all. From beginning to end, he had been standing on the five-color Taoist altar without moving. However, there was an indescribable strange look on his face. It was not that he didn't want to move, but that he was shrouded by a mysterious force and couldn't leave the five-color Taoist altar at all. When he killed Tuo Chenghai just now, he could only kill him from a distance. Otherwise, Tuo Chenghai would have died even more miserably. Who? Lin Sun transmitted his voice. Who was a little surprised. She was keenly aware that there was something wrong with Lin Sun's mood. Tell old Toad for me not to worry about me. Lin Sun's eyebrows showed a touch of complexity. His body, standing on the five-color Taoist altar, also produced a kind of struggle, as if he was resisting something. Whose clear eyes suddenly shrank. What's wrong with you? Almost at the same time, Zhuan Yuheng and the others also noticed that Lin Sun didn't come down from the five-color Taoist altar, which seemed very abnormal. When Lin Sun was about to say something, his body suddenly flew up, as if being grabbed by a big hand, and rushed to the universe above the sky. He seems to have been taken away. Tang Su was stunned, whose heart suddenly clenched, and she said, Lin Sun. She was about to rush up to help. Don't worry about me. Remember what I said. Tell them that I will definitely go to find them. In the depths of the universe, Lin Sun's clothes were fluttering, and his body was shining. He quickly transmitted his voice. Swish! The next moment, his figure completely rushed into the depths of the universe and was covered by the vast, cold darkness and could no longer be seen. Whose beautiful face changed, and she was stunned. Why did he leave so suddenly? This unforeseen event happened so quickly that everyone present was caught off guard. How could this be? Hua Xingli couldn't help but frown, showing a look of surprise. Strange. Zhuan Yuheng and the others were also surprised and doubtful. The universe above the sky was boundlessly vast, silent, and deep. There were no stars left since a long time ago, and it revealed an expanse of gray color. No one knew where Lin Sun had gone and whether he could come back alive. Don't worry, I will, after a long time, Hu came to her senses, and there was a touch of firmness between her eyebrows. After calming down, she realized that before Lin Sun left, he seemed to have obviously sensed something, which was why he had warned her. However, it happened too suddenly, and he didn't have time to explain anything. You must come back alive, Hu murmured in her heart. This was Kunlun Ruins, one of the 4 great ancient ruins, and the pilgrimage platform was one of the 3 forbidden areas in Kunlun Ruins. It was the most mysterious place. Even if an emperor came, it would be impossible for them to know where Lin Sun had gone. On this day, the powerhouses scattered at the foot of Kunlun Hill all heard about what happened on the pilgrimage platform, causing a great sensation. As time passed, when these powerhouses returned from the forbidden area of the pilgrimage platform and arrived at the ruins of Kunlun Ruins, the news also spread. For a moment, there was an uproar. This guy is simply a devil who kills without batting an eye. On the pilgrimage platform, Lin Sun killed all the way. On the pilgrimage platform, he killed Su Lingkuan, crippled when Qing Xue cut Sha Luqing, and killed Ku Du. After such a bloody and terrifying battle record was exposed, countless powerhouses were shocked and shocked. 10,000 feet above the sky, illuminating the past and present alone. After hearing that Lin Sun had created an unprecedented miracle after becoming a sage, some people were envious, some were moved, and some were in disbelief. How could a young man from the ancient Desolation realm have such an eye-catching achievement? Oh my God! He actually obtained the supreme fortune of becoming an emperor or an ancestor. On the other hand, when they found out that Lin Sun had swallowed the energy of the stars in the universe with a raise of his hand on the 5-color Dao platform, and he'd seized a supreme fortune that no one had come into contact with since time immemorial, everyone was excited to the point of almost going mad. This guy's luck is actually so heaven-defying. If this news gets back to the starry ancient path, those old antiques will definitely treat him as a meal. Becoming an emperor or an ancestor. This is the most unattainable dream of many powerhouses in the starry sky. Many people were overwhelmed with emotions. Where is he? Where is he now? Some people were filled with killing intent and uncontrollable greed. He disappeared. Soon, the powerhouses distributed in the Kunlun Ruins heard that after obtaining the fortune of becoming an emperor or an ancestor, Lin Sun had mysteriously disappeared from the depths of the universe above the Ascension altar. They were all stunned. Disappeared? Such a guy who could cause an earthquake on the starry ancient path and attract the attention of countless cultivators had actually disappeared? This was simply maddening. It's a good thing for this guy to disappear just like that. Someone muttered. Since Lin Sun entered the Kunlun Ruins, no matter if it was at the treasure refining place, the peak of Mount Yulong, or the Ascension altar, he had killed countless powerhouses. Those who had died in his hands, such as Su Lingkuan, Wen Qingxue, Ming Yi, Kuan Julin, Yin Chunjun, and Gu Xin, were countless. It was no exaggeration to say that Lin Sun had offended more than half of the heirs of the 6 major Dao courts and the 10 major war clans. In the Dark World, there were also 2 major forces, the Divine Sunshine Ancient Sect and the Hidden Land Realm, who had their eyes on Lin Sun. Under such circumstances, once Lin Sun appeared, he would be treated as a thorn in the flesh and suffer an unimaginable blow. Not to mention that he still possessed the supreme fortune of becoming an emperor or an ancestor. It was enough to attract the attention of an emperor realm cultivator and make a move against him. Now that he had mysteriously disappeared, it could instead temporarily avoid a lot of trouble and disturbances. What a pity, sigh. I have to tell the sect about this matter and everything about Lin's son. Since ancient times, there has never been such a sensational event in the Kunlun ruins. I have a feeling that if Lin's son is still alive, he will be regarded as the fattest prey by the powerhouses on the starry ancient path sooner or later. On the Grand Tao, all sorts of heroes are after a deer, and Lin's son has already become a deer that any old monster covets. All sorts of discussions and conversations continued to ferment. There was no doubt that in the future, Lin's son's name would rush into the starry ancient path like a storm and cause a commotion. Where's that woman called Ahu? As long as we capture her, Lin's son will definitely be the greatest threat when he appears in the future. That's right. This woman has a close relationship with Lin's son. With her, we can indeed use her to restrain Lin's son. I heard that she disappeared after the battle on the pilgrimage platform ended. However, we can be sure that she definitely didn't leave the Kunlun ruins. There were also people discussing in secret and pointing the spearhead at Ahu. It wasn't just Tang Su. At this moment, everyone present was stunned, and their pupils dilated. After Lin Sun's pilgrimage tablet reached 90,000 meters, it didn't stop. Instead, it suddenly rose by a large margin. Under everyone's shocked gazes, the pilgrimage tablet only stopped when it reached a height of 30,000 meters. The surroundings were so silent that one could hear a pin drop. Everyone felt their throats go dry, and their emotions surged. It was difficult for them to calm down. Since ancient times, a height of 90,000 meters was already an achievement that everyone could only look up to. Just think about it. In the endless years of time, there were only 3 people whose pilgrimage tablets hung at an altitude of 90,000 meters. Amongst these 3 people, one was Xin Shangchen from the primordial times. He'd stepped foot into the Emperor stage a long time ago, and his title was Profundity Emperor. The other was Feng Tianzi from the Black-Yellow Dao court 100,000 years ago. He'd similarly stepped foot into the Emperor's stage, and his title was Enlightenment Emperor. He was living in seclusion in the Black-Yellow Dao court. The last was a mysterious person called Qi Ning from 60,000 years ago. No one knew his origins, and no one knew where he would go in the future. He was the most mysterious amongst the 3. At this moment, Lin Sun had relied on his own pilgrimage tablet to create an unprecedented achievement. The pilgrimage tablet shone alone in the sky. This was like a miracle, and it brought boundless shock to everyone. It was common knowledge that the higher the position of the pilgrimage tablet, the stronger the transformation after the pilgrimage tablet would be, and the more karmic luck one would obtain from the heavens. On the other hand, Lin Sun's pilgrimage tablet was the best in history outside the sky. How shocking would the transformation he'd undergone after becoming a sage be? How much karmic luck would he obtain from the heavens? Just thinking about it made people's hearts tremble. I didn't expect that Brother Lin would catch up from behind and become the biggest winner on this pilgrimage platform. After a long time, Hua Xingli sighed. The expressions of the others were also uncertain. Before, Lin Sun seemed to have obtained the supreme secret of becoming an emperor or ancestor, and now he was conferred as a sage, surpassing all the others in the past and present. He was indeed the biggest winner. Even Ahu didn't expect that such a miracle would happen to Lin Sun, and he was shocked for a while. On the 5-color Taoist altar, Lin Sun stood alone, tall and straight, exuding a kind of ethereal aura of perfection. Looking from a distance, under his seemingly plain aura, there was a great majesty that went straight to people's hearts. That was the aura of a sage, and it was extraordinary. I don't care whether he's a winner or not. I only know that this man has seized a good fortune of becoming an emperor or ancestor. Tuo Chenghai's expression changed, and there was uncontrollable jealousy and hatred in his heart. Zhuan Yuheng, Nie Jianshun, and others had different expressions. Swish! Suddenly, Lin Sun made a move. The broken sword cut through the air at an incredible speed, like a dream, lightning, and illusion. Tuo Chenghai's face changed greatly. How could he expect that Lin Sun would make a move without saying a word? When he wanted to dodge, it was too late, so he could only face it head-on. Bang! The next moment, Tuo Chenghai was shaken away, blood spurting from his mouth and nose. Almost at the same time, Ahu's figure flashed, and he came to Tuo Chenghai. A transparent flying sword appeared in his palm, and he stabbed at Tuo Chenghai. From Lin Sun's attack to Ahu's attack, their cooperation was seamless and impeccable. Tuo Chenghai, who had already suffered a heavy blow, had no time to react, and his neck was pierced by the flying sword. With a puff, his head was chopped off and blood splashed. Tuo Chenghai's eyes widened, and his face was full of anger and unwillingness. His body fell to the ground, and his head rolled down. Until his death, he had never thought that he would die at this time, when he finally reached the top of the pilgrimage altar and seized the opportunity to be conferred as a sage. Too unwilling. This bloody and sudden scene also made Zhuan Yuheng and others' hearts skip a beat, and their faces changed. A fly that doesn't know what's good for it is buzzing non-stop. Isn't it courting death? Ahu said indifferently. The others were silent. After calming down, they realized that if they had a conflict with Lin Sun at this moment, it was really hard to say who would win. But Lin Sun didn't care about all this at all. From beginning to end, he had been standing on the five-color Taoist altar without moving. However, there was an indescribable strangeness in his expression. It was not that he didn't want to move, but a mysterious force enveloped his whole body, and he couldn't leave the five-color Taoist altar at all. When he killed Tuo Chenghai just now, he could only kill him from a distance. Otherwise, Tuo Chenghai would have died more miserably. Ahu, Lin Sun transmitted his voice. Ahu was a little surprised, keenly aware that there was something wrong with Lin Sun's mood. Tell Old Toad for me not to worry about me. Lin Sun's eyebrows showed a touch of complexity. His body, standing on the five-color Taoist altar, also produced a kind of struggle, as if he was resisting something. Ahu's clear eyes suddenly shrank. What's wrong with you? Almost at the same time, Zhuan Yuheng and others also noticed that Lin Sun didn't come down from the five-color Taoist altar, which seemed very abnormal. Lin Sun was about to say something, but his body suddenly flew up, as if being grabbed by a big hand, and rushed to the universe above the sky. He seems to have been taken away. Tang Su was stunned. Ahu's heart suddenly clenched, and she said, Lin Sun. She was about to rush up to help. Don't worry about me. Remember what I said. Tell them that I will definitely go to find them. In the depths of the universe, Lin Sun's clothes were fluttering, and his body was shining. He quickly transmitted his voice. Swish! The next moment, his figure completely rushed into the depths of the universe, and was covered by the vast, cold darkness, and could no longer be seen. Ahu's beautiful face changed, and she was in a daze. Why did he leave so suddenly? This unforeseen event happened so quickly that everyone present was caught off guard. How could this be? Hua Xingli couldn't help but frown, showing a look of surprise. Strange. Zhuan Yuheng and the others were also bewildered. In the universe above the sky, it was boundless, cold, and deep. There were no stars, and it appeared to be gray. No one knew where Lin Sun had gone, and if he could return alive. Don't worry, I will definitely. After a long time, Ahu came back to her senses, and a hint of determination appeared between her brows. After calming down, she realized that before Lin Sun left, he seemed to have obviously sensed something, which was why he reminded her. However, it happened too suddenly, and he didn't have time to explain anything. You must come back alive, Ahu murmured in her heart. This was Kunlun Ruins, one of the 4 great ancient ruins, and the pilgrimage platform was one of the 3 forbidden areas in Kunlun Ruins. It was the most mysterious place. Perhaps even an Emperor stage figure would not be able to find out where Lin Sun had gone. On this day, the powerhouses scattered at the foot of Kunlun Hill heard about what happened on the pilgrimage platform, causing a great commotion. As time passed, when these powerhouses returned from the forbidden area of the pilgrimage platform and came to the ruins of Kunlun ruins, the news also spread. For a moment, there was an uproar. This guy is simply a devil who kills without batting an eye. On the pilgrimage path, Lin Sun killed all the way. On the pilgrimage platform, he killed Su Lingkuan, crippled Wen Qingxue, killed Sha Luqing, and killed Ku Du. After such a bloody and terrifying battle record was exposed, it caused countless experts to be shocked and astounded. Tens of thousands of feet above the sky, illuminating the past and present. After hearing that Lin Sun had created an unprecedented miracle after becoming a sage, some people were envious, some were moved, and some were in disbelief. How could a young man from the ancient desolation realm have such an eye-catching achievement in the pilgrimage path? Oh my God, he actually obtained the supreme fortune of becoming an emperor or ancestor. On the other hand, when they found out that Lin Sun had swallowed the energy of the stars in the universe with a raise of his hand on the five-color Tao platform, and he'd seized a supreme fortune that no one had come into contact with since time immemorial, everyone was excited to the point of almost going mad. This guy's luck is actually so heaven-defying. If this news spreads back to the starry sky ancient path, those old antiques will definitely treat him as a meal. Becoming an emperor or ancestor, this is the most unattainable dream of many powerhouses in the starry sky. Many people's hearts were in turmoil. Where is he? Where is he now? Some people were filled with killing intent and uncontrollable greed. He disappeared. Very soon, the powerhouses distributed in the Kunlun ruins heard that after obtaining the fortune of becoming an emperor or ancestor, Lin Sun had mysteriously disappeared from the depths of the universe above the pilgrimage platform. They were all stunned. Disappeared? Such a guy who could cause an earthquake on the starry sky ancient path and attract the attention of countless cultivators had actually disappeared? This was simply maddening. It's a good thing for this kid to disappear just like that. Someone pondered. Ever since Lin Sun entered the Kunlun ruins, no matter if it was at the treasure refining ground, the peak of Mount Yulong, or the pilgrimage platform, he had killed countless powerhouses. Those who had died in his hands, such as Su Lingkuan, Wen Qingxue, Ming Yi, Kuan Julin, Yin Chunjun, and Gu Zongxin, were countless. It was no exaggeration to say that Lin Sun had offended more than half of the successors of the 6 major Dao courts and the 10 major war clans. In the Dark World, the Divine Sunshine Ancient Sect and the Hidden Land Realm had their eyes on Lin Sun. Under such circumstances, once Lin Sun appeared, he would be regarded as a thorn in the flesh and suffer an unimaginable blow. Not to mention that he still possessed the supreme fortune of becoming an emperor or ancestor. It was enough to attract the attention of an emperor realm powerhouse and make a move against him. Now that he had mysteriously disappeared, it could instead temporarily avoid a lot of trouble and disturbances. What a pity, Sai. I must tell the sect about this matter and everything about Lin Sun. Since ancient times, there has never been such a sensational event in the Kunlun ruins. I have a feeling that if Lin Sun is still alive, he will be regarded as the fattest prey by the powerhouses on the ancient path of the starry sky sooner or later. On the great path, all sorts of heroes are vying for the deer, and Lin Sun has already become a deer that any old monster covets. All sorts of discussions and conversations continued to ferment. There was no doubt that in the future, Lin Sun's name would rush into the ancient path of the starry sky like a storm and cause a commotion. What about that woman called Ahu? As long as we capture her, Lin Sun will definitely be the greatest threat when he appears in the future. That's right. This woman has a close relationship with Lin Sun. With her, we can indeed use her to restrain Lin Sun. I heard that she disappeared after the battle on the pilgrimage platform ended. However, I'm sure that she didn't leave the Kunlun ruins. There are also people who were secretly discussing and pointing the finger at Ahu. Chapter 1852. On the top of Mount Yulong. In the small world, one of the 9 secrets. While the outside world was in an uproar, Ahu brought back the news about Lin Sun. He disappeared just like that. Golden-winged Rock King Jr., Yuan Fatian, Mi Hongjin, and the others were all in a daze. They were all shocked by Lin Sun's achievements on the pilgrimage platform. Their blood boiled, and they yearned for him. But when they learned that Lin Sun had left abruptly on the five-color Taoist altar, they couldn't help but feel a sense of loss and disappointment. They were also worried, because no one knew where Lin Sun had gone this time, and whether he would encounter danger. For a moment, the atmosphere was a little gloomy. "Hey, why aren't you sad at all?" Yuan Fatian was surprised to find that both Old Toad and Ah Lu were smiling, and even chatting while drinking. "Yeah, you're too heartless, aren't you?" Golden-winged Rock King Jr. was speechless. Old Toad rolled his eyes grumpily and said, "Since my elder brother told us not to worry in advance, he must be fine." Ah Lu criticized them with a serious face. "You still don't know my elder brother. He has encountered many dangers over the years, but he's still living a good life. This is called heaven helps the worthy." Everyone looked at each other. Was this what brothers were like? Yuan Fatian was a little depressed. He looked at Little Silver and Little Tian and said, "What about you?" "Lin Sun is your master." Before he finished, Little Silver said resolutely, "Master will be fine. Don't worry about him. It's not a life or death separation. Why be sad? Your doubts are really childish." Little Tian, standing on Little Silver's shoulder, nodded. Yuan Fatian, the big black bird, said proudly with his wings on his back, "I once told Lin Sun that his fate is extraordinarily hard. Except for me, no one in the whole world can compare with him." Everyone rolled their eyes in unison. Seeing this, the sense of loss in Ahu's heart dissipated a lot, and he smiled. Over the years, Lin Sun seemed to be fighting alone, but in fact, he had already gathered a group of good brothers to go through thick and thin with him. A few days later, at the peak of Mount Yulong, a group of experts appeared. "That woman called Ahu appeared here a few days ago," someone said quickly. "I can be sure that she must have used the flying immortal token to hide in that mysterious, forbidden area." Someone looked into the distance. That place was filled with mist, making it impossible to see clearly. There are less than 2 months left before the Kunlun ruins ends. It's impossible for that woman to hide there forever. After a brief discussion, these experts decided to wait for the hare to come to them. As long as he was caught, he would have a handle on Lin Sun. As long as Lin Sun showed up in the future, this could play a great role. Suddenly, someone said excitedly, "She's out, she's out." Everyone was stunned. They had just made a decision, and the prey had appeared. Raising his head to look, he saw a beautiful figure that was graceful like a dream walk out from the misty area. "Looks like our luck isn't bad." Some people's eyes shone brightly, their hearts stirred. "Prepare yourselves. This woman is going to be consecrated as a saint. We have to go all out to deal with her." The others nodded. They had all heard the news that Ahu was going to be consecrated as a saint. This time, they were fully prepared, so they were not afraid. "Girl, come with us, will you?" Seeing Ahu coming out of the mist, the leading young man in a splendid robe said leisurely, as if he was sure of victory. "Where are we going?" Ahu asked with a smile. "You'll know when we get there." The young man in the splendid robe smiled happily, especially when he saw Ahu's beautiful and incomparably beautiful appearance. His heart became hot. What a peerless beauty! "Are you all here for me?" Ahu's smile was pure with a touch of natural charm. Many people gasped while their hearts shook, and all of them were stunned by the charm that Ahu revealed with every move she made. "Look at these fools." With a sneer, Little Silver appeared on Ahu's shoulder, and on Little Silver's shoulder stood Little Tian, who was fluttering his wings. They probably think that they can do whatever they want now that Big Brother isn't here. Following that, Alu, Old Toad, the big blackbird, the little golden-winged rock, Yuan, Fatty, and Mi Hongjin, Yi Mo, and the others all came out of the mist. Every single one of them had a cold expression on their faces. Oh no! The young man in the splendid robe and the others' expressions changed. Who would have thought that it was not just Ahu, but a group of people? Furthermore, it seemed that even the blackbird was not to be trifled with. Swish! At that moment, Little Silver attacked. His figure disappeared into thin air, and with a muffled grunt, a figure fell to the ground. His body was intact, but his soul had already been pulverized. From beginning to end, no one saw how Little Silver attacked, or how he killed the enemy. Whoosh, little Tian flew up lightly, its black wings like a pair of heavenly blades crisscrossing in the air. Like cloth, two straight cracks were cut in the air. At the end of the cracks, two powerhouses who could not dodge in time were cut in half. Attack! Kill! The young man in the splendid robe and the others attacked furiously. Go to hell! Old Toad roared, its golden eyes shining, and it rushed up. Almost at the same time, Alu picked up an iron rod and rushed forward like an ancient god of barbarians. The little golden-winged rock, Yuan Fatian, Mi Hongjin, and Yi Mo didn't stay idle. Boom! On the top of Yulong Mountain, a melee broke out. Ahu stood there alone and didn't make a move, because Little Silver, Little Tian, Old Toad, and Alu all broke through and became peerless great saints after swallowing the peach of immortality. The most abnormal thing was that each of these guys was more talented than the last, more powerful than the last, and more powerful than the last, and more powerful than the last. As the saying went, birds of a feather flocked together. How could those who could fight with Lin Sun all the way to the present be ordinary? For example, Little Silver was a descendant of spirit-eating bugs, Little Tian was a descendant of sky-splitting butterflies, and even Old Toad and Alu had powerful backgrounds. The little golden-winged rock, Yuan Fatian, and the others were all ancient freaks who had awakened from the ultimate, one of the four great ruins of God. How could their backgrounds be ordinary? Even Mi Hongjin and Yi Mo were ruthless people who had risen to power through endless slaughter. In just a moment, the battle came to an end, and all those who had ill intentions were killed on the spot. Brother Lin, if you saw this scene, you wouldn't be worried anymore, Ahu murmured in his heart. From that day on, Ahu and the others searched for opportunities in the Kunlun ruins in a mighty manner, setting off countless bloody storms along the way. Many powerhouses trembled with anger. Lin Sun was already cruel enough, but who would have thought that after he left, his friends would also behave just as well? But no matter how angry they were, it was destined to be in vain. Lin Sun didn't care about the revenge from the starry ancient path, but how could Ahu and the others care? Time flew by. 2 months later, there was a shocking change in the Kunlun ruins. The flying immortal river descended from the sky and covered different areas of the Kunlun ruins, which meant that the Kunlun ruins would once again fall into silence. On this day, Ahu left safely with Little Silver and the others. There were no casualties. No one knew where Ahu and the others went. The trip to the Kunlun ruins came to an end. Less than 10% of the powerhouses had walked out alive. Most of the powerhouses had already died in it, and their cultivation had vanished into thin air. Among these fallen powerhouses, there was no lack of peerless figures like Void Spirit Kuan, Wen Qingxue, and Mengyi. This was the cruelty of the competition for opportunities. As one of the four great divine ruins, not anyone could leave the Kunlun ruins alive. Lin Sun, if you're alive, you'll definitely go to the starry ancient path. On the day he left, Zhuan Yiheng had a strong premonition that a small ancient desolation region could no longer accommodate someone like Lin Sun. If he wanted to seek the Emperor's Tao, he was destined to go to the starry ancient path. Of course, the premise was that he was still alive. In a few years, the Starry Saint list will be re-ranked. I wonder if this guy's combat strength can rank in the top 10. On the day he left, Lin Sun's figure appeared in Hua Xingli's mind. In his opinion, with Lin Sun's foundation in combat strength, he could firmly rank in the top 10 when the Starry Saint list was re-ranked. However, he could not determine which rank Lin Sun could rank in the top 10. I look forward to the day you appear on the starry ancient path. In the end, Hua Xingli smiled and floated away. If we meet again, I'll definitely fight you. I don't care if I can beat you or not, Tang Su muttered to himself. Lin Sun, oh Lin Sun, as long as you dare to appear on the starry ancient path, you're destined to die. There were also many people who resented Lin Sun. For example, the successors of the primordial, Qinkuan, and Panwu Dao courts, as well as the Blood Kirin, Tao, Heavenly Ghost, and Xiongqi from the 10 great combat clans. No matter what, from this day onwards, Lin Sun's name and deeds swept through the starry ancient path like a storm. One had to know that the Kunlun ruins was one of the 4 great divine ruins. It had received the attention of the various major forces on the starry ancient path long before it opened. Now that the Kunlun ruins had come to an end, what happened to Lin Sun could not be concealed at all. Very soon, it was found out by the various major forces. For a time, it caused a huge uproar. Lin Sun, a young man who walked out of the ancient desolation realm, dominated the Kunlun ruins, suppressed all enemies, and rose powerfully in the bloody slaughter. Treasure refining ground, Mount Imperial Dragon, pilgrimage platform. Wherever he appeared, death and blood would be stirred up. Anyone who went against him would be killed. He was like a demon god. This news spread along with Lin Sun's name and spread to the starry ancient path, causing an uproar and shock. When they found out that Lin Sun had obtained the secret of becoming an emperor or ancestor, the big shots and old monsters who lived in seclusion were alarmed. They all started to pay attention and remember the name Lin Sun. Chapter 1853. In the ancient desolation territory, on the bustling streets of White Jade Capital, cultivators carrying swords could be seen everywhere. There were men and women, old and young. Yun Qingbai was not the first to carry a sword on his back. However, in White Jade Capital, because of him, it led the trend of carrying a sword. Many years ago, Yun Qingbai had died, but the cultivators in White Jade Capital had long been accustomed to the habit of carrying a sword. This was regarded as the symbol of a true sword cultivator. White Jade Capital in the sky, 12 buildings and 5 cities. Immortals caressed my head, and I tied my hair and accepted longevity. Like many years ago, White Jade Capital was still prosperous and prosperous. Recently, a young man named Su Bai had caused a sensation after arriving in White Jade Capital a few days ago. In 3 days, he had broken through 9 of the 12 buildings, and every time he did so, he broke the record set by Yun Qingbai. Such eye-catching achievements were naturally particularly eye-catching. Today, Su Bai came to the Soul Refining Tower. Outside the Soul Refining Tower, there was already a crowd of onlookers everywhere. It was an unprecedented grand occasion. Back then, Senior Lin Sun, the first true saint in the ancient desolation territory, also came to White Jade Capital to break through the 12 buildings and set an unprecedented record. Is Su Bai going to imitate Senior Lin Sun? If Su Bai can set another record today, it will be equivalent to breaking all the records set by Yun Qingbai when he was in the reincarnation development realm. Do you know the origin of Su Bai? I don't know where this guy came from. It's really amazing that he has such a high level of cultivation at such a young age. There was a lot of discussion in the field. Not long after, a straight figure walked out of the highly anticipated Soul Refining Tower. He was a young man in green clothes, with firm eyebrows and a dignified temperament. Su Bai. There was a commotion in the field. Some women even showed infatuation. Since ancient times, beauties loved heroes, not to mention a dazzling young hero like Su Bai. He broke the record. An old voice sighed in the Soul Refining Tower. This sentence caused a complete sensation in the field. Everyone looked at Su Bai as if he was a rising star in the ancient desolation territory, about to shine in the sky. However, Su Bai sighed in his heart. The world only knew that he had broken Yun Qingbai's record, but no one knew that his efforts these days had not once surpassed the record left by his master Lin Sun. How powerful was Master when he was at the reincarnation development realm? Su Bai was startled, his thoughts flying. In a nearby area, the crowd was cheering, but he paid them no attention. From the day he acknowledged Lin Sun as his master, Su Bai had regarded Lin Sun as his lifelong goal. For this reason, he'd cultivated tirelessly and tempered himself with all his might, and he'd practically never slacked off. No matter how magnificent the mountains and rivers were, how beautiful the cities were, how vast the world was, and how beautiful the beauties were, Su Bai would never linger. Su Bai cultivated diligently, without any distractions. Coupled with his innate sword bone, his cultivation naturally advanced by leaps and bounds, far surpassing his peers. The world regarded him as an outstanding figure among the rising stars in the ancient desolation realm. But Subai knew that the foundation he had now was still not as good as that of his master. Besides feeling dejected, he couldn't help but feel shocked. The more he learned about his master's past in the ancient desolation realm, the more he felt that he was lacking. Compared to those in the same realm, he was still lacking. I must work harder. Subai secretly clenched his fists. He had always remembered Lin Sun's words. His only hope was that when his master returned to the ancient desolation realm one day, he would not be disappointed with him. He was already satisfied with this. As for the evaluation and opinions of the world, he simply didn't care. This guy is just like Yin Qingbai back then, someone in the field spoke. Subai, who was thinking, suddenly frowned, looked over, and said, Yin Qingbai is Yin Qingbai, and I am me. He and I are destined not to be the same kind of people. Everyone was stunned. It was just a casual remark, but Subai actually refuted it, giving people the feeling that he was making a fuss over a minor issue. However, Subai was too lazy to explain a reason. He was about to leave. He had no interest in anything other than cultivation. Young man, are you willing to join my heavenly sword sect to cultivate? An old man suddenly appeared and looked at Subai with a kind smile. There was a commotion in the field, and everyone was envious and surprised. The Heavenly Sword sect was one of the few ancient orthodoxies in the ancient desolation realm. And this old man was an antique of the Heavenly Sword sect, a master who had already stepped into the saint realm. I'm not interested. To everyone's surprise, however, Subai refused without even thinking about it. Because in this life, he would only worship one person as his master. The old man could not help but be stunned, and then he immediately smiled. Don't you want to think about it? With the Heavenly Sword sect as your backer, any cultivation resources you need can be satisfied. Sorry. Subai shook his head and left directly. The old man could not help but frown as he watched Subai's figure gradually disappear. He shook his head and walked away. On this day, the news of Subai breaking Yun Qingbai's record and refusing to join the Heavenly Sword sect spread quickly, as if it had wings. However, no matter how sensational the news was, no one had ever given a definite answer about Subai's origin and his master. His rise was more like a mystery. Just like Lin Sun, when he rose in the ancient desolation realm, no one knew his master and origin. It was only later that people learned that he came from the lower realm. The lower realm, Xiao Empire. At the top of the observatory, the night sky was quiet and the stars were twinkling. If that kid is still alive, he should have left the Kunlun ruins. The old priest stood leaning against the railing with his hands behind his back. He had an old face, a stooped figure, and gray hair, but he had a pair of eyes that were as clear and clean as a baby's. After leaving the Kunlun ruins, he's destined to never return to the lower realm. For this kid, only the starry sky ancient path can bear his footsteps in seeking the Tao. In the moon abode, the solitary old man drank and spoke lazily. The two were separated by an unknown distance, but they were talking to each other at this time. The old priest said softly, "The child that Lu Boya spent so much effort to look after is always different. If nothing goes wrong, this child should already be a peerless great saint." The solitary old man drank the wine in the jug in one gulp and smacked his lips. Great sage? Haha, perhaps. Stop guessing. You won't be able to figure it out. However, I do know that if Lu Boya is still alive, he's definitely hiding on the starry sky ancient path. Perhaps. The old priest seemed to be deep in thought. Lu Boya. He was a legendary figure that was like a mystery. Back then, even the old priest and the solitary old man could not see through where he came from. It was a desolate and gloomy world. In the mountain ridge, blood mist soared, transforming into all sorts of distorted and terrifying phenomena. Waves of sharp roars rang out like evil ghosts laughing. Terrifying fragments of the great Tao fell from the sky, emitting an extremely terrifying aura. Boom! A huge ferocious bird rushed out of the mountain ridge. It spread its rotten wings that were filled with black mist and shook a fierce light that shot into the sky. It was like an undead, ferocious bird from hell, ferocious, enormous, and terrifying. On the desolate ground in the distance, a figure was swiftly teleporting. She wore a black robe with a hood that covered half her face, and only half of her crystalline and pure white chin was revealed. Her figure was delicate and graceful, yet she revealed a fierce and decisive bearing when she moved, and she held a bone spear that was suffused with dreamlike starlight in her fair hand. Rumble. The enormous, ferocious bird tore through the sky in pursuit, and its rotten wings flapped out surging black mist that seemed like the aura of death was spreading out. Even space was in disorder while the ground was collapsing. Clang! Suddenly, the delicate figure stomped on the ground, and then her figure rose up from the ground before she twisted her waist and raised the bone spear in her hand. She fiercely tossed it out. Pooh! The bone spear pierced through the neck of the enormous, ferocious bird and pierced through its body, causing a string of black-colored and rotten blood to flow out. Inconceivably, the enormous, ferocious bird seemed as if it didn't feel pain as it pounced down from the sky, and its stench covered the heavens and the earth. The black-robed figure stood in midair and suddenly took a deep breath before she stretched out a crystalline and snow-white palm, and then her slender fingers pressed together as she punched out. A large hole was suddenly blasted open in space a few kilometers away, while spatial turbulence swept out like a torrent, and it drowned the enormous, ferocious bird's body within it. Rumble. An explosion that shook the heavens and the earth resounded. That expanse of space seemed as if it had shattered into pieces while the heavens and the earth were overturned, and it revealed signs of great destruction. Woo, 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 the piercingly cold waves of wind swept out and lifted the black hood of the delicate figure to reveal a face that was beautiful to the point even the heavens and the earth dimmed in comparison. Her skin was fair and crystalline. Her eyes were large and clear. The bridge of her nose was straight, and her lips were puckered lightly to form a beautiful arc. Her figure was tall and graceful, while her features were picturesque, and she looked silently into the distance. The heavens and the earth were desolate, while the mountains and rivers were dim, yet she was a wisp of the most brilliant color. She was so beautiful and so tranquil. Summer solstice. After a short moment, she lightly pulled down the black hood to conceal her face, and then she arrived at the place the enormous, ferocious bird had been annihilated and picked up a gray-colored fragment of the Grand Tao. 1937th. She thought for a moment and waved her hand. The white bone spear flew over from afar and landed in her palm. He turned around. Once again, he walked into the depths of the desolate, broken, and gloomy world. All these years, she had been fighting here alone with a spear. He had once been forced into a desperate situation, his figure bathed in blood, his body shattered, and he was on the verge of death. He had also killed many powerful enemies, and wherever his spear pointed, he was unparalleled. He had once silently healed his wounds in the darkness and was in a daze. But most of the time she was fighting, like never tired. In this desolate and ruined world, there was no one to talk to. She didn't want to say anything either. Even though she was heavily injured and on the verge of death, she only treated it in silence. He did not say a word. Only when she occasionally thought of that figure would she feel that the world wasn't completely dark. She walked alone in the vast and gloomy world, and her graceful figure drew out a lonely shadow on the barren land. Lin Sun, wait for me. The following content was free. 1. The content of the chapter that was uploaded yesterday was repeated twice. Goldfish contacted the technical department to correct it, but the extra crosstalk coins could not be refunded. Goldfish looked to the platform. There were almost 1,000 readers who had spent 18 extra crosstalk coins, which meant that each of them had spent 8 cents more. In a few days, Goldfish would send out a big red packet on the official account to make it up to everyone. For those who did not follow the official account, they could search for Xiaojinyu 233 and follow it. 2. Since yesterday morning, Goldfish had been running a fever, and her temperature was 38.7 degrees. She felt uncomfortable all over, and she could only update one chapter today. Chapter 1854. In the depths of the vast universe, Lin Sun was like a light feather that was carried by an enormous force and flashed deeper. There were no stars, no light, and not even a speck of dust in the surroundings. He couldn't even feel the passage of time or the distance. It was empty. However, there was no danger along the way, causing Lin Sun's nervous and vigilant state to gradually calm down. When he first obtained the Tao Karma from the master of Feng Shui on the five-color Tao altar on the pilgrimage platform, Lin Sun sensed that something was wrong after it transformed into the pattern of a crescent and 3 stars and disappeared into his right palm. A taboo force appeared on the five-color Tao altar, preventing him from leaving. When he engraved his Taoist name, Lin Daoyuan, on the pilgrimage tablet, the taboo force had already changed. It was like a huge hand that wanted to grab him away from the five-color Tao altar. At that time was tight, so Lin Sun didn't have time to explain the reason. He could only bid farewell to Ahu in a hurry. I wonder where exactly I'm going. Lin Sun spread his divine consciousness, but he couldn't sense anything. As time passed, he couldn't be bothered to think about the reason. He started to calculate the gains and losses of this trip to Kunlun ruins. In the treasure refinement ground, the broken blade absorbed a large amount of treasure refinement Dao Qi, and 54 natal treasure inscriptions appeared. Its power had undergone a tremendous change. In the Peach Garden's secret realm, swallowing an immortality peach was equivalent to 10 years of cultivation, allowing his cultivation to break through to the perfection of the Great Saint stage. What left a deep impression on Lin Sun was that the purple figure hidden in the immortality peach tree had been waiting for the arrogant senior brother to return. At the peak of Mount Yulong, he killed all the heroes, entered one of the 9 secrets, and learned the secret of the Great Way Infinite Bell. He used the Great Way Infinite Bottle to collect the wish energy of all living beings. It was also at that time that Lin Sun found out about senior brother Li Xianwei and the Tao Discussion Lantern Party on Kangwu Mountain in the ancient Desolation region. On the way to the pilgrimage platform, one of the 3 forbidden areas of Kunlun ruins, he met senior brother Gyupu and the Solitary Sky Demon Emperor. In the end, the Solitary Sky Demon Emperor was sealed in the Tower of Endless Way. Senior brother Gyupu gave him the 3,000 ups and downs left behind by the master of Feng Shui Mountain, and taught him the Great Way Golden Court scripture. When he arrived at the pilgrimage platform, Lin Sun's cultivation had broken through to the late stage of the Great Sage realm. After an incredible induction, he finally understood that the opportunity regarded as the secret of becoming an emperor or ancestor was the Taoist karma left by his master, the master of Mind Mountain. Apart from these ups and downs, he had experienced many bloody battles since he entered the Kunlun ruins. There was no need to elaborate on the process, but Lin Sun had already determined that he'd probably completely offended many great powers amongst the 6 great Tao courts and 10 great war clans. However, no matter in the past, present, or future, Lin Sun would never fear or regret it. At the same time, in each bloody battle, Lin Sun obtained an astonishing amount of spoils, including some invaluable treasures. For example, one Qingshua's trump card, a mysterious sword tip, and Void Spirit Kuin's 16 diagrams of Emperor Saber. In short, Lin Sun had gained a lot from this trip to Kunlun ruins. The only regret was that he wasn't able to reunite with Old Toad, Alu, and the others before such a sudden and unforeseen event occurred. Suddenly, Lin Sun's heart trembled, and he looked into the distance. A wisp of light suddenly appeared in the depths of the empty universe, and then a figure suddenly condensed. It was a middle-aged man. He wore a high hat and ancient clothes, and his sleeves fluttered in the wind. His beard and hair were like silver, and his expression was indifferent. He stood in the void, and his body was surrounded by terrifying power of the Grand Tao of Order. From afar, he was like a ruler that presided over the universe. His dignity was boundless, and it made Lin Sun feel as tiny as an ant just by looking at him from afar. His body felt cold. "You finally arrived. I didn't let you down for making me wait here for so long." An indifferent voice sounded out from the middle-aged man's mouth. Every single syllable was like a decree from the heavens, and it resounded with a rumble, causing the nearby space to ripple violently. When that person spoke, he had already looked at Lin's son. What kind of gaze was that? It was deep like the sky, indifferent and merciless, as if the heavens were looking down at an ant. Lin Sun felt his scalp go numb, and his mind was on the verge of collapse. Almost in an instant, he judged that this should be an existence in the Emperor realm. Young man, the fortune on the pilgrimage platform isn't something you can bear now. Leave it to me. The middle-aged man waved his hand. Swoosh! Lin Sun felt the power that enveloped his body was dispersed, and then he came uncontrollably to the middle-aged man's side. The middle-aged man's eyes were indifferent as he stretched out a hand. At this moment, Lin Sun's hair stood on end. It was just a hand, but it seemed to cover the sky and the sun, and the power released was so terrifying that he couldn't even think of resisting. Right at this moment, the 3,000 floating and sinking appeared. It was just a horsetail whisk, and it waved lightly in the void. The middle-aged man was shaken back, and his body crushed a huge crack in the void of the universe, and it extended extremely far. The horsetail whisk of the Great Way. Guyupu, you're not dead yet? The middle-aged man's furious voice resounded in the distance, and it shook the universe. The 3,000 floating and sinking glowed, and an illusory figure dressed as a woodman appeared. It was Guyupu. Lin Sun was stunned, and he blurted out, Senior brother, you're still alive? Guyupu couldn't help laughing, and said gently, Junior brother, death is like a lamp going out. It's not that easy to resurrect. This is just the willpower I left behind. Guyupu, how dare you, a dead man? Stop me. In the distance, the middle-aged man appeared out of thin air with an indifferent look. His beard and hair flew in the air, and he suddenly took out an 8 trigrams mirror. Swish! The 8 trigrams mirror rotated, and 8 mysterious worlds emerged. Wind, thunder, earth, fire, sky, water, mountain, and swamp. The 8 worlds produced 8 kinds of world order, integrated with the supreme Tao of Emperor, and released unimaginably terrible power. Guyupu held the horsetail whisk and waved it gently. Boom! The universe was complicated, and the void of the universe collapsed. Lin Sun only felt a vast expanse of whiteness in front of him, and he couldn't see or feel anything. The confrontation of such power was too supreme, and it was not something he could understand or pry into at all. When his vision was clear again, the middle-aged man was no longer in the field, and only the remaining fragments and cracks in the void proved the horror of the battle just now. Junior brother, there should be a lot of demons and monsters along the way. They're all concerned about the Tao karma left for you by Master. Beside him, Guyupu said gently, However, you can go ahead. They can't hurt you. Senior brother, can you tell me why I'm here? Lin Sun couldn't help asking. Guyupu sighed. Because there is only a chance of survival from here. For countless years, the Tao karma left by Master on the pilgrimage platform has been targeted by many old things. If you leave from other places in Kunlun ruins, you're doomed to suffer a great disaster. Lin Sun was stunned and frowned, but this place doesn't seem to be complete. The middle-aged man, just now, was obviously an old monster who had stepped into the Emperor realm, and he could recognize the horsetail whisk at a glance. How could he be an ordinary person? Guyupu said, Junior brother, this road is left by Master. It can't be wrong. If you leave from other places in Kunlun ruins, even if you escape, you will be targeted for life. Targeted for life. Lin Sun couldn't help but feel a little cold at the thought of it. Senior brother, you. At this moment, Lin Sun suddenly saw Guyupu's figure blurred and wisps of light rain scattered. It was obvious that he was about to disappear. Junior brother, take the 3,000 floating sinks and go forward. Guyupu smiled gently, like an elder who was urging eagerly. When his voice fell, his figure disappeared completely. Lin Sun was stunned. He held the 3,000 floating sinks firmly in his hand, took a deep breath, and looked into the depths of the universe. Buzz, the invisible power of the 3,000 floating sinks bathed Lin Sun in it and took him to the depths of the universe. Along the way, it was still empty. There was nothing. Whoosh! After a long time, a handsome young Taoist flew over from afar, stepping on a yellow-skinned gourd that emitted chaotic chi. He smiled warmly, and his eyes were clear and clean. He said, "Young friend, if you can block my sword, I will leave immediately." Lin Sun gasped. This Taoist looked like a young man, but he was actually an old monster in the Emperor realm. "Junior brother, let me do it." A hearty laugh suddenly sounded in the 3,000 floating sinks. Accompanied by the laughter, a tall figure with sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes appeared. He was dignified and exuded a wanton and unrestrained aura. Lin Sun's dusty memory was touched, and he recognized at a glance that he had seen this young man in the test of the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival in Kangwu Mountain. Senior brother Li Xianwei? He was shocked. "Yes," the young man said with a smile. In the distance, the smile on the young Taoist's face disappeared and was replaced by a rare, solemn expression. His body exuded a terrifying aura that could shock the world. He took a deep breath, and a Taoist sword appeared in his palm. He said word by word, "I have a sword that can kill all Tao and make it void." Boom! The Taoist sword swept out like a natural moat, cutting through the void of the universe. At the same time, Li Xuanwei's sleeves were fluttering. He flicked his fingers, and the void was suddenly replaced by a vast and heavy aura. Vaguely, there seemed to be a green lotus swaying, and its petals bloomed layer by layer, blocking the sword chi. When the sword chi disappeared, the green lotus fell, and the petals withered. Green Lotus World Method is really worthy of being a first-class Taoist scripture in the world. Goodbye. In the distance, the young Taoist sighed, put away the Taoist sword, stepped on the yellow-skinned gourd, and turned away. He said that he would only use one sword, and since it was blocked, he turned away. "Thank you." Li Xianwei cupped his hands in the distance. Lin Sun, on the other hand, couldn't help feeling shocked. Chapter 1855. Li Xianwei stood in the void, his sleeves and long hair fluttering in the wind, looking cool and elegant. Lin Sun looked at him in a daze, his emotions fluctuating. He could understand the appearance of Gyupu, but Li Xuanwei's appearance was completely beyond his expectation. "Junior brother, I may not be able to answer your doubts, but I can tell you everything I know." Li Xianwei smiled and pointed to his head. "You can probably see that I'm just a force of will. My head is not very good." Lin Sun shook his head with a wry smile. "I've probably guessed some of the reasons. These are all related to the 3,000 ups and downs, right?" Li Xianwei raised his thumb and praised. "Junior brother, you're right. The 3,000 ups and downs is a treasure left by Master. It's incomparably marvelous. Although it's severely damaged, it can escort you out safely. I think it's not a difficult thing." Lin Sun looked at the horsetail whisk in his hand and asked after a moment of silence, "Senior brother, is it because the Tao karma I obtained this time is unusual that I was targeted?" Li Xian smiled and said, "Yes, a long time ago, Master left this on the pilgrimage platform. Over the countless years, any martial emperor with a bit of insight would more or less be able to see some clues. It's only natural for them to make some plans for it." Lin Sun gasped. For a Tao karma, they had planned and waited for countless years. Then just how extraordinary was this Tao karma to be able to make those Emperor Realm existences care so much about it? This suddenly reminded Lin Sun of the time in the mulberry forest when Calamity Emperor left a chance to become an emperor but made Golden Cicada, White Cicada, Thousand Feather Sword Flower, and other terrifying old monsters wait in the mulberry forest for a long time. Such a comparison also made Lin Sun more aware of the preciousness of the crescent and 3 stars on his right palm. "Junior brother, let's go. I'll send you off again," Li Xianwei said and strode forward, his clothes fluttering in the wind. Lin Sun's figure was enveloped by a shapeless force, and he flashed towards the depths of the universe with Li Xianwei at an unbelievable speed. "Junior brother, I was transformed from a chaotic green lotus planet by Master. After I gain intelligence, I have been following Master to cultivate. In terms of talent, I am not as good as many of my senior brothers and junior brothers. In terms of foundation, I'm also not as good as many of my senior brothers and junior brothers. The only thing I can show off is that I was born with a bright sword heart. On the way, Li Xianwei said casually, "Unfortunately, this is only a strand of my will brand. Otherwise, I would be able to let junior brother appraise the Green Lotus Abode world technique that I've figured out myself." Lin Sun smiled and said, "Senior brother, I don't lack methods now. Ninth senior brother just taught me his yellow court scripture not long ago." Li Xuanwei's eyes lit up. "That's ninth senior brother's trump card. It's to temper the 5 organs and condense the 5 virtues Tao body. The higher one's cultivation, the more terrifying the combat strength they can display." Back then, when we were discussing the Tao together, everyone had a lively conversation. Only ninth senior brother was slow in speech and didn't say a word. But when we really fought, ninth senior brother was completely domineering. He summoned his 5 Dharmakaya and killed all his senior brothers and junior brothers. Ha! In the end, Li Xianwei couldn't help laughing. Come to think of it, this memory left a deep impression on him, and he couldn't forget it until now. Lin Sun felt a little sour in his heart. Ninth senior brother had passed away a long time ago. He took a deep breath and changed the topic. "I heard from the spirit of the Great Way Lawless Bell that you once went to the ancient Desolation territory and cultivated in the Azure Parasol Mountain." Li Xianwei nodded. "Indeed. Where are you now, senior brother?" asked Lin's son. Li Xianwei was stunned and said helplessly, "Who knows? This wisp of willpower has been sealed in the 3,000 ups and downs a long time ago. If I'm on the starry sky ancient path, I can sense the existence of my original body in an instant, but I can't in this godforsaken place." Lin Sun was surprised. "However, junior brother, if you reach the starry sky ancient road, you can make a trip to the Xuanji Dao sect. Their founder, Bo Yazi, was an honorary disciple that I casually took him back then. If he is still alive, he might be able to find out where my original body is." Lin Sun was shocked and stunned. Xuanji Taoist sect? Wasn't that the sect where Ji Qian and Jiang Heng were? If that was the case, wouldn't their sect's founding master have to call him martial uncle? What made Lin Sun feel most incredible was that the founder of Xuanji Taoist sect was just a registered disciple accepted casually by his senior brother. A registered disciple, not a true disciple. Lin Sun's expression became strange. He had a strong hunch that his guess should be correct. On the starry sky ancient path, it was absolutely impossible for the existence of any sect to repeat their names. In that case, it would be tantamount to a battle of orthodoxy. Who could bear it? There was bound to be conflict and killing. "Oh, someone else is coming." Suddenly, Li Xian said with a smile. Before his voice died away, a snow-white giant lion rushed out of the distant universe. It was incomparably handsome and surrounded by a holy aura. On the snow-white giant lion sat a figure of Buddha. A round light shadow appeared behind his head, reflecting the strange phenomenon of flowers falling from the sky and the light of Buddha. As soon as it appeared, the dark and empty universe suddenly became bright and dazzling, full of solemn and tranquil zen. Bursts of Sanskrit resounded like the sound of nature. There was no doubt that this was a Buddha who had reached the emperor realm. In the eyes of Buddhist practitioners, he could be called an indestructible bodhisattva with infinite light. If it was before, Lin Sun's mind would have been shocked by the solemn Zen sound, but now it was different. Because Li Xian was here. "Monk, you know more about fate than I do. Let me give you a piece of advice. Repent and be saved." Li Xian spoke in a clear voice. His clothes fluttered and flowed with green, chaotic qi, and the momentum around him suddenly changed. He was like a green lotus that held up the turbid heaven and earth. In the struggle for the great Tao, persistent pursuit will lead to the other side. Fellow Taoist, if you're willing to discuss the Tao, this poor monk can talk with you. On the giant white lion, the Buddha put his palms together. He was neither sad nor happy nor angry. Ha! Who doesn't know that all Buddhist practitioners are eloquent? To be able to persuade a demon to convert to Buddhism, your eloquence is extraordinary. Li Xian laughed. Since you're unwilling to retreat, then don't blame me for being rude. Boom! He casually pressed his palm out. The Buddha chanted, and his body seemed to be made of golden liquid, releasing the sound of dragons and tigers. Sanskrit appeared in his internal organs, limbs, and bones. He was like a bodhisattva that had descended to the world, extremely sacred. Whoosh! Tens of thousands of golden lights gathered in the Buddha's palm. Layers of treasure light flowed from his body, and he made a palm gesture with one hand facing the sky. Li Xian smiled teasingly. The palm he struck out suddenly turned crystalline like a piece of green jade glass. It was imprinted with the power of the Tao patterns of order. This time, Lin Sun was not disturbed, so he clearly saw a shocking scene at this moment. Boom! Li Xian's palm was blocked 3 feet above the Buddha's head, and then it collapsed. The Buddha's figure remained motionless from beginning to end. Did he block it? Just as this thought came to Lin Sun's mind, a trace of bitterness suddenly appeared on the solemn face of the Buddha, as if he had encountered an obstacle when he was trying to comprehend the Buddha's Buddhist teachings. A wisp of willpower can have such great power. How can I not turn back? With a sigh, Lin Sun saw that there were traces of cracks on the Buddha's golden body, like a spider web, and soon spread all over the body. Finally, there was a bang. The whole figure of the Buddha, like a broken vase, turned into pieces. In the end, even the giant white lion under his crotch wailed. Its hair withered, its bones and skin cracked inch by inch, and blood splashed everywhere. It turned out that this Buddha didn't block Li Xian's palm. Under the spread of the palm force, his golden Buddha body had already been shattered. Lin Sun couldn't help but take a breath. Before, when Li Xian blocked the young Taoist sword, he was inexplicably shocked. But when he saw Li Xian take the initiative to attack, he knew that Li Xian's combat power was so fierce. Thank you. Li Xian cupped his hands. In the distance, the golden Buddha light gathered and turned into the figure of the Buddha. He put his palms together, bowed his head, and chanted the name of Buddha. Donor, there are many people ahead. I'm afraid you can't protect this boy alone. After saying that, he turned around and left. At this time, Lin Sun noticed that the figure of Li Xian suddenly became blurred and illusory at this moment. Obviously, this wisp of willpower couldn't hold on for long. However, Li Xian didn't seem to care at all. Instead, he laughed happily and said, "This monk is not reconciled to his defeat, but let's wait and see." From beginning to end, he was unrestrained, leisurely, and carefree. That kind of demeanor made Lin Sun yearn for it. Li Xian said, "Junior brother, there's not much time. Lend me the 3,000 ups and downs and the Tower of Endless Tao." Lin Sun took them out without hesitation. With the 2 treasures in hand, Li Xian added a touch of confidence between his eyebrows. He said, "Junior brother, have you ever seen the demeanor of Master in those days? He sat on the 9th heaven cloud cattail, with a horsetail whisk in one hand and a pagoda in the other. Tut, that's the demeanor of a real master." Saying that, without waiting for Lin Sun's reply, he strode away with Lin Sun. Time flew, after the time it took to burn a stick of incense. In the depths of the originally empty universe, specks of bright starlight suddenly appeared, and they flickered without end and were faintly visible. Lin Sun was refreshed. When he walked before, there was only emptiness everywhere. It was oppressive and gray, making people unable to feel the existence of space and distance. But now it was different. At the same time, Li Xian stopped. A pair of sword-like eyebrows wrinkled, which was rarely seen. He murmured, "Junior brother, we're in a bit of trouble this time. Who would have thought that a teaching event would make 3 old guys of the Emperor realm join hands together? How shameless they are. They're obviously going to bully us.